Chapter 2494. Zhou was the first to make up her mind. This was her husband, after all. She was worried about his injuries and couldn't care too much. She took off her jacket and skirt, but she was still too embarrassed to take it all off. She jumped into the hot spring with only her underwear on. Qing Shu, how do I heal you? Which acupuncture point should I press on? Song Qing Shu thought that his wife loved him the most, so he hurriedly told her about an acupoint. Zhou made a sound of agreement and gently placed her fair and moist palm on his acupoint, preparing to treat his injury. Li Qinglu was the second to go in. She was from Li Qiushui's branch, after all, and had a much bolder personality. With someone taking the lead, the others saw this and also jumped into the water with red faces. They spread out and pressed on his acupuncture points in different directions, preparing to heal him. Song Qing Shu only saw a field of white in front of him. No matter which body it was, they were all sparkling like jade. Under the steam of the hot spring, they emitted an enchanting light. He couldn't help but feel his blood boil. Wanqing, why aren't you coming down? Yilu Nancian was very embarrassed at this time. It was fine if she was with Mu Wanqing or Li Qinglu. After all, they had been together for so long, but she wasn't familiar with Zhou or Wan Yinping at all. She subconsciously tried to talk to Mu Wanqing to divert her attention. Mu Wanqing's face reddened. She stuttered, that you guys can help him. She knew that this was Song Qingshu's trick. How could she have a nerve to jump in? Come down. One more person means more strength. Wan Yinping also urged. Song Qingshu also laughed and extended his hand to her. Yeah, let's go together. It'll heal faster this way. Mu Wanqing spat. In the end, she was still extremely shy. You heal yourself. After saying that, she jogged out with a red face. Song Qing Shu secretly felt a little regretful. This girl was still a little thin-skinned. If he had known it would be like this, he would not have told her that his injury was fine. He turned around and looked at the other beauties, who were either delicate, elegant, or charming, and said, then let's get started. But which one of these women wasn't the most outstanding person in their respective territories? They first felt strange about Mu Wanqing's reaction, and then they finally understood. Zhou was both embarrassed and angry. You bastard! With her taking the lead, the others also joined in, pressing him down and giving him a beating. Throughout the process, although Song Qingshu had a lot of advantages, in the end, all the women left one after another, leaving him alone in the hot spring. Sigh. I went for wool and came home shorn. Song Qingshu wanted to cry, but had no tears. No matter who he went to, he was rejected. In the end, they simply gathered together to play Pai Gao, not giving him any chance at all. Song Qingshu was alone in the empty room. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. This couldn't go on. Of course, he knew that it was mainly because everyone was shy. No one could put down their pride to be alone with him, and it was even more impossible for them to be together. In order to avoid such a situation where the three monks had nothing to eat, they had to set up a rule as soon as possible. This way, it would be completely up to the will of the heavens, and they wouldn't have to figure out each other in private. Sai, Senior, you are so wise. The rules that have been formed for thousands of years are really reasonable. He really couldn't sleep, so he went out to wander. Unconsciously, he came to the yard where Castley was. He saw Yuan Zi sitting in the yard with her, seeming to be comforting her. What's wrong with her? Song Qingshu approached and asked. Oh, why are you here? Obviously, Yuan Zi didn't expect him to come. Thinking of something, she blushed instantly. Song Qingshu smiled embarrassedly. My injury has been cured, so I came out to exercise. Yuan Zi slightly raised the corner of her mouth. She had roughly guessed what was going on, so she didn't expose his lie. She said, Castley is a little homesick. She still misses her sister. After thinking for a while, Song Qingshu walked over, held Castley's waist, and directly flew to the roof to sit there. Castley didn't resist and let him hold her. She even gently leaned on his shoulder. On the other side, Yuan Zi was a little embarrassed. She hurriedly got rid of his hand and took 2 steps back. If you want to bring Castley up, just bring her up. Why did you bring me up too? Song Qingshu said with a wry smile. If I didn't bring you up, it would be inconvenient to talk. Yuan Zi pouted. It turned out that she was just a translator. Song Qing-shu said, Castley, although you can't go back to see your hometown for the time being, I can let you see the bright moon in your hometown. Saying that, he pointed to the moon in the sky. While translating for him, Yuan Zi couldn't help thinking, this guy is really good at deceiving girls. It's indeed as bright and beautiful as the moon in my hometown. Hearing his explanation, a bright smile appeared on Castley's face. It won't be long before Qing Tong comes. Then you and your sister can reunite. Song Qing-shu thought of the agreement between him and Qing Tong. Calculating the time, he should have arranged the people in the Vulture Palace. Maybe they had already started to come here. Thank you, Brother Song. Perhaps it was because of the coldness of the night. Castley's body trembled slightly, and she subconsciously shrank into his arms. Song Qing-shu hugged her while secretly transferring vital energy into her body to warm her up. If you really miss home too much, wait for Qing Tong to come and ask her to bring you back to the southern border, Song Qing-shu said. Now that the Mongolian army had been defeated, their control over the southern border would definitely be extremely weak. Castley shook her head and said, No, I want to be with you. My father and brother are already gone in Yarkand. The place where you are is my home. Hearing her words, Song Qing-shu was stunned. A feeling of tenderness welled up in his heart, and he hugged her tightly. Yuan Zi also had a complicated expression. She did not expect Castley to have such deep feelings for him. At the same time, she secretly admired her courage. If it was her, she would definitely not dare to express her feelings so straightforwardly. However, Castley said it in a very normal and natural manner. It was as if it was a matter of course and would not cause any displeasure. Castley nestled in his arms and looked at the bright moon in the sky. Her eyes were filled with longing. What's more, my sister will be coming with us soon. With Brother Song and my sister, it's like home to me. Smelling the refreshing fragrance of a young lady in his arms, Song Qing-shu lovingly combed her hair that was a little messy from the cold wind. Castley, tell me about your hometown. I want to know more about you. Okay, Castley talked about the grasslands. She talked about herding horses and goats since she was young. She talked about how she secretly ate flowers behind her father and sister's back. Her eyes were like crescent moons. Even Yuan Zi was infected by her smile. They recalled their childhood. After all, they had known each other for a long time and had played together on the grasslands. Later, Castley also pestered Song Qing-shu to ask about him. Song Qing-shu said with a smile, I have a lot of things. What do you want to hear? Castley raised her head. Her exquisite and perfect face was covered with a layer of moonlight, as if it was covered with a layer of veil. It gave off a sparkling luster. I want to know everything. Tell me. Song Qing-shu was stunned. That's a long story. Castley smiled like a flower. It's okay. Tell us one by one. Anyway, we have plenty of time. Song Qing-shu thought it was true. As the saying went, there was still a long way to go. Anyway, he had plenty of time in the future. Therefore, he told her about the things that happened after he came to this world. Castley kept exclaiming and clenching her fists nervously. Yuan Zi, who was at the side, had a strange look in her eyes. He had always been high-spirited, but she didn't expect him to have such a miserable past. The more she knew about him, the gentler she looked at him. On the way, Song Qing-shu saw her gently massaging his waist with her little hands. He said with a smile, It's quite windy up there. It's a little tiring to keep balance. Do you want me to lend you a shoulder? Yuan Zi blushed and shook her head subconsciously. However, she immediately regretted it. She couldn't be as natural as Castley and say whatever she wanted to say. Just as she was worrying about her gains and losses, she was hugged by Fong Xingjian. Yuan Zi was shocked. However, when she found that Fong Xingjian simply let her lean on him, she gradually felt relieved. The three of them sat on the roof and talked about their past while admiring the moon. They got to know each other more and more. In the end, Castley fell asleep while leaning on Song Qing-shu. It became Yuan Zi and Song Qing-shu's turn to chat. In the end, even Yuan Zi didn't know when she fell asleep. When she woke up the next morning and found that she was sleeping in Fong Xingjian's arms, She couldn't help but be startled. She quickly sat up with a blush. Cassie also woke up. Her big, beautiful eyes were full of doubts. It was so windy last night. Why did I feel so warm when I fell asleep? Yuan Zi was stunned. She also remembered that her body seemed to have been basked in the warm sun last night. She soon realized that Song Qing-shu had been circulating his energy all night to keep them warm. She hurriedly explained the reason to Cassie. As she spoke, she suddenly noticed that both her and Cassie were very dry. However, there were some dewdrops on Song Qing-shu's clothes. The softest part of her heart was immediately touched. Song Qing-shu said, "Go and freshen up. Of course, you can also go back to sleep. I still have some things to deal with." As he spoke, he flew back to the ground with the two girls in his arms. On the way, Yuan Zi no longer resisted his touch. After bidding farewell to the two girls, Fang Xingjian came out of the courtyard and ran into Dongfang Muxue in red. Under the sunlight, she looked even more beautiful. At this moment, she was looking at him with a faint smile. "You really put in a lot of effort to pick up girls." Song Qing-shu rolled his eyes. "How dare you criticize me? What did you and Li Qiushui do last night?" "You can ask her." Dongfang Muxue left a bright smile and turned to leave. Song Qing-shu shook his head. These two were really. Next, he went out of the palace and found Lady Zhen, whom he had not seen for a long time, in a courtyard in the city. Lady Zhen was surprised and delighted to see him. She threw herself into his arms and cried uncontrollably. "Brother Song, Khoresm has been completely destroyed." She had stayed in Xingqing Prefecture during this period to be responsible for the exchange of materials between the Central Plains and Khoresm. Not long ago, she had received the news that the Mongolians had sent Su Liewu to wipe out the remaining forces of Khoresm with an army. Prince Zalandin was betrayed by a traitor. He was killed when he was resting under a big tree. After receiving the reward from the Mongolians, Khoresm was completely destroyed. It was hard for her to live alone in a foreign country. Fortunately, she had faith to support her. But now this faith was gone. She felt that there was no place for her in this big world. Especially when the Mongolians had besieged Xingqing Prefecture, she felt even more hopeless. Firstly, she was worried that she would fall into the hands of the Mongolians after the city was breached. Secondly, she felt that the Mongolians were becoming more and more powerful, and no other country could resist them. Until yesterday, when the Mongolians suddenly collapsed, she still felt as if she was in a dream. Song Qing-shu gently patted the voluptuous body in his arms to comfort her. "Everything is in the past. I have already avenged you." "Did you really kill Taimu?" Jin Su-san raised her head. Her plump face was still streaked with tears, but she immediately reacted. "Who else in this world can deal with that demon other than you? I should have thought of it long ago. Thank you. Thank you for avenging my country, my family, and my fiancée." Jin Su-san's face was filled with emotion. Before Song Qing-shu could reply, Jin Su-san looked at him with a red face and passion. "I have to thank you." As she said this, she directly knelt in front of him. Song Qing-shu was stunned. But because he could only look at the many beauties in the palace last night, he was already filled with anger. At this moment, he was instantly ignited by her passion. In the following period of time, Si Siluo and the troops from Sichuan left Xingqing Prefecture one after another. Because Wanyan Zhongjie and Wanyan Ping were reluctant to leave, the Jin Kingdom temporarily stayed in Xixia to help the Xixiao army recover the broken land. There were still many remnants of the Mongolian army in some cities. There were also some local forces that had surrendered to the Mongolians, and there were also bandits that came from the war. Song Qing-shu brought Jun Su-san into the palace to introduce her to the ladies. Initially, the ladies were not used to seeing a foreign beauty, but they were soon convinced by her ability. After all, she had led the remnants of Khwarezmis to fight against the Mongolians for so many years. Whether it was military affairs or the fickleness of human relationships, she was very good at them. Soon, she got along well with the ladies. Hua Qingtong also rushed over from Sky Mountain. When she learned that he had defeated the Mongolians, she was shocked and in awe. She also helped Xixia to fight against the remnants of the Mongolian army. In the end, she and Yelu Nancian worked together. With Zhen Sushan's help, they quickly recovered the territory that Xixia had before the war. They even expanded their territory. Of course, Xixia also suffered great losses in this war. They could only slowly recover by recuperating. During this time, they also received news from the Mongolians that Ali Buj and Kublai were really fighting for the throne. With Zhao Min's help and Hai Wanli and Yaluan's help, they successfully created public opinion that only the one who avenged the Khan could inherit the throne. So, Kublai and Ali Buj sharpened their swords and turned their attention to the east. That damned Water Moon sect, that damned Japan. When he heard that the Mongolians had decided to attack Japan, Song Qingshu was finally relieved. He specially asked Dongfang Muxue not to let the Qing army stop them. Dongfang Muxue said that she would not stop them. Even if she did, it would be useless. Although the area in the northeast was under the control of the Qing kingdom, it was sparsely populated and extremely cold. There were not many soldiers stationed there. If one did not pay special attention to it, it would be hard to notice if the Mongolian army passed by. Song Qingshu was completely relieved. He lived like an emperor for the next few days. Wang Yinping did not leave. Zhou Zhuo also stayed here. Together with the women of Xixia and Dongfang Muxue, he was so happy that he forgot about his duties. One day, he received news that there was a huge change in the southern Song dynasty. Guo Jing, the hero of Xiangyang, was the direct descendant of Chiron. The Jia family and the Shi family worked together to launch a coup in Lin. They helped Guo Jing ascend the throne and change the name of the country to Zhou. I remember that it was announced 2 months ago that it was going to end. Why are there still so many people who are shocked? You can follow the public account, Monk Lu Ru, to understand the latest news. Chapter 2495. Hearing this news, Song Qingshu was completely shocked. Previously in Mongolia, he learned of Guo Jing's background, but he never imagined that Guo Jing would participate in the rebellion and even become the emperor. However, he immediately shook his head. This was not in line with Guo Jing's character. There must be a reason behind it. He hurriedly inquired about Guo Jing's situation in detail, but unfortunately, the messenger also did not know. What about the reaction from Prince Qi's side? Is Ying and the others safe? Song Qingshu felt that the whole thing was extremely strange. Logically speaking, he had left quite a lot of forces in Lin City. With Ren Wuxing leading the Sun Moon sect to assist Ren Ying and the Vulture Palace controlling the Imperial Palace, he had also taken in Han Qingzhou subordinates. Coupled with the Wang family support, the Jia family and the Shi family shouldn't be able to overturn the sky, especially when Golden Snake Battalion was stationed in Linen. The messenger replied, originally, the Jia and Shi families did not dare to make any moves. However, not too long ago, news of Wang Ye's appearance in Mongolia reached Linen. There were rumors that you had died under the siege of 3 Mongolian grandmasters. The Jia and Shi families claimed that the Prince of Qi in Lin and was an imposter. At that time, many of our allies were also watching from the sidelines, allowing them to succeed. Song Qingshu secretly sighed. This time, he had reaped what he had sown. Disguising and causing trouble everywhere was always successful. However, once it was exposed, it was easy for others to use against him. But now he did not care so much. He could not always live in the dark. He had to be in front of the stage. Now that he had enough confidence, it did not matter even if his disguise was exposed. The messenger continued to answer. However, Princess Qi is currently fine. She has already withdrawn with some people in the Imperial Palace. She has not been caught by the Jia and Shi families. Only then did Song Qingshu feel relieved. Ren Ying's body was not very good after using the blood ignition technique. Although she later received Zhang Sanfeng's rootless tree technique to nourish her body, she could not return to her peak in a short time. It did not matter how chaotic the situation in Linen was. He could clean it up slowly. But if anything happened to Ren Ying, he would regret it for the rest of his life. However, he did not understand why the Jia family would take such a risk. He did not doubt that the Jia family had the power to do so. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. There were many former officials of the Jia family in the imperial court and local governments. Moreover, there were secret forces such as the Isle of Knighthood and the Ghost Mountain Villa. With the help of the Sher family, it was possible for them to succeed. What he couldn't figure out was the motive of the Jia family. Although Jia Sherdao was dead, the imperial court had adopted a conciliatory strategy. Moreover, Jia Bayu had become the emperor's son-in-law of the Western Xia country. Overall, the Jia family had seen a new dawn. There was no need for them to take risks. Was Jia family? Was because they were worried about the family. And Jia family was because they was afraid of Mongolia would be destroyed. Jia family Jia. But that was still not right. Calculating the time when the Mongolians launched their attack, the Mongolians hadn't even started to attack the Western Xia when they planned all of this. He could not figure it out. It seemed that he had to go to Lin and to figure it out. Because of the great changes in the southern Song dynasty, Song Qingshu obviously couldn't stay in Xixia anymore. He had no choice but to bid farewell to the girls. Mu Wanqing, Li Qinglu, and Yelu Nanxian still had to clean up the ruins of Xixia, so they had no time to accompany him. They had no time to stay. Wanyan Ping and Wanyan Zhongjia had to go back to the Jin Kingdom. After all, the Mongolians had also attacked the Jin Kingdom. They had to go back to help goodbye. Song Qingshu thought about it and sent Jin Susan to them. He felt that they did not have enough manpower in the Jin Kingdom. It would be easier for them to have Jin Susan, a top military counselor, to help them. Over the years, they had been able to deal with the Mongolians with Khwarezm's resources. Now, with the power of the Jin Kingdom, she would have more room to play. Dongfang Muxue went back to the Qin Kingdom. Without her there, Song Qingshu could not rest assured. Li Qiushui's reluctant expression before she left made Song Qingshu feel strange. "What, are you jealous?" Dongfang Muxue pulled Song Qingshu aside and said with a faint smile. Song Qingshu rolled his eyes to express his current mood. Dongfang Muxue kissed his earlobe and said, "Next time you come to the Forbidden City, I'll accompany you no matter what you want. I can also get those concubines in the harem to come together. Some of them are not bad." Song Qingshu swallowed with difficulty and immediately refused sternly. "Am I that kind of person?" Uff, Dongfang Muxue chuckled. When someone heard what I said just now, his heart beat faster. "You can't hide it from me. I will wait for you." She smiled and blew him a kiss. Then, she turned into a red shadow and disappeared into the distance. Next, Song Qingshu asked for Kazli's opinion. Because she had expressed homesickness before, if she missed her hometown, he would ask someone to escort her back to the Nanjiang Kingdom. Kazli refused. She insisted on being with Song Qingshu. Moreover, with her sister Hua Qingtong accompanying her, she would not feel lonely. Hua Qingtong was a little disheartened because of what happened in the Nanjiang Kingdom. She did not want to go back to that sad place. She also wanted to go to Jiangnan to have a look and relax. Moreover, they had just established their relationship, so she was very attached to Song Qingshu subconsciously. Song Qingshu naturally would not refuse. With the two sisters accompanying him, it would be very pleasant on the way. Moreover, Hua Qingtong was capable of becoming a general and a minister. With her assistance, it would be much easier to deal with the chaos in the Jiangnan Kingdom. Needless to say, Zhou Zhiruo would go the same way, even if she returned to Yangzhou. Moreover, they were husband and wife and did not want to be separated again. In the end, only Yuanzi was left. She said gloomily, "Now that Sister Hua is here, I don't need to translate anymore. The matter in Xixia has been settled, so it's meaningless for me to stay. It's time for me to go back to Grandpa." Hearing this self-pity in her tone, Song Qingshu comforted her with a smile. "I didn't take you as an interpreter. Now that Yelqiang City is ruined, and you have nothing to do when you go back, why don't you go to Jiangnan with me? Compared with the desolation of the desert, the gentleness of Jiangnan has a different flavor." Yuanzi bit her lip. Although she was willing, she always felt very shy. They were a family. What was the point of her following them? So she had been quite hesitant. At this time, Kazli also took her hand and shook it. "Sister Z, come with us." Hua Qingtong also said, "Yes, you have been working hard taking care of Kazli. It's a good time to go to Jiangnan." Before I left, Senior Yuan specially told me that you don't have to go back in a hurry. He has to pay homage to my master and masteress, so I'm afraid he has no mood to accompany you. The Vulture Palace is deep in the mountains. It's not fun for you to go there. Ah, Yuan Zi blushed. She thought, what's wrong with Grandpa? Why does it seem like he keeps sending me out? It will be too embarrassing if Brother Song and the others misunderstand. At this time, Zhou also said, Sister Z, you'd better come with us. You have a relationship with the Amaze sect, and the Amaze sect has lost many talents now. I can teach you some kung fu of the Amaze sect along the way. Seeing that she had spoken, Yuan Zi finally nodded. Then, thank you, senior sister. Next, the group of people embarked on the journey to Jiangnan. Xixia had always produced horses, and they had also seized a large number of good Mongolian horses this time. Therefore, Mu Wanqing and the others had prepared good horses for them. Each person had 3 fine horses to take turns to ride. This way, they could rush to Jiangnan at the fastest speed. They kept on going and stayed overnight in a small town before dark. It was such a long distance, and they couldn't sleep in the open all the time, even if they were in a hurry. This kind of small town in the northwest had never seen so many fairy-like figures, especially these peerlessly beautiful women. Any one of them would be the undisputed #1 beauty in this small town, let alone so many of them standing together at the same time. Both the guests and the waiters in the inn were stunned, especially after the news that Princess Fragrance carried a strange fragrance spread out. Many people in the whole town came to see the fairy after hearing the news. At the beginning, Song Qingshu was quite proud. After all, he enjoyed the envious eyes of those men around him. As the saying went, men didn't need ornaments, and women were his best ornaments. However, later, more and more people came, and he even faintly heard that some people were secretly discussing some bad things. Therefore, he taught some ignorant guys a lesson, which completely shocked all the onlookers. Even Zhou Zhiruo and the others showed their kung fu intentionally or unintentionally. Noticing his special kung fu, no one dared to have any improper thoughts. At the same time, they all discussed secretly. With such great kung fu, it was no wonder that he could find so many beautiful women as his companions. After this episode, they became much more familiar with each other. Zhou Zhiruo praised Kazli's beauty, and Kazli envied Zhou Zhiruo's kung fu. Moreover, Yuan Zi and Hui Qingtong translated for them from time to time. Therefore, they became more and more familiar with each other. However, although they were familiar with each other, they still faced a problem at night. How many rooms should they get? Hui Qingtong and Kazli were biological sisters, so they naturally shared a room, and Yuan Zi shared a room. Originally, Song Qingshu intended to share a room with Zhou Zhiruo. After all, they were a legitimate husband and wife. However, in front of other women, Zhou Zhiruo was too embarrassed to ask him to get another room. However, as an experienced man, Song Qingshu had already secretly bribed the shopkeeper. Knowing that there were no more empty rooms, he had to share a room with him. After all, he couldn't sleep in the same room with Yuan Zi. Zhou Zhiruo could only agree helplessly, but she still felt embarrassed. In addition, she secretly regarded herself as a wife and was worried that she would leave a jealous impression. Therefore, she kept driving him to Hui Qingtong's room. Song Qingshu was also helpless. She is sleeping with Kazli. Anyway, Kazli is willing to marry you. It doesn't matter, Zhou Zhiruo said as she pushed him out. Song Qingshu was also helpless. Was he going to fall into the predicament of 3 monks without water again? However, Zhou Zhiruo was firm and didn't allow him to stay in her room. Therefore, he had to go to Hui Qingtong. Who is it? Hui Qingtong was alert after all. Soon, she heard the sound of someone sneaking in and woke up from the bed. It's me, Song Qingshu said embarrassedly. He made some noise on purpose just now. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to be discovered with his martial arts skills. Hui Qingtong blushed at once. She was shy and anxious. Why are you here? Zhiruo drove me out, Song Qingshu said with a wry smile. Noticing Kazli, who was sleeping quietly beside him, he asked, Is Kazli asleep? She was really blessed by heaven. She was so beautiful even when she was asleep. Every strand of her hair was extremely seductive. Yes, she doesn't know martial arts. She's a little tired from the journey today. Hua Qingtong gently tidied her sister's hair, but she quickly reacted and said, "Sister Zhou chased you out. What are you doing here?" Song Qingshu had a wronged expression on his face. If she doesn't come to your place, should she go to Ziyi's place? She's just a little girl, don't scare her. Seeing that she also wanted to drive him away, he hurriedly said, "If you don't take me in, I can only sleep on the streets." In the end, Hua Qingtong still couldn't bear to do it. "I'll get you a blanket and spread it on the floor. Feel bad for yourself." Sure. Song Qingshu also knew the principle of taking things step by step. Hua Qingtong helped him make the bed on the floor, and the two of them slept separately. Lying on the bed, Hua Qingtong felt her heart pounding. She couldn't fall asleep. She turned over and wanted to talk to the man on the ground, who knew that when she turned around, he was already lying beside her. "When did you come up?" Hua Qingtong blushed. "I wanted to say something, but I didn't know what to say. I just wished everyone a happy weekend." Chapter 2496. I just came up. Song Qingshu looked at the girl in front of him from a close distance. Her skin was fairer than the women in the Central Plains. Not only did the years of war not add to the weathered look on her face, but it also added a bit of heroic spirit. It perfectly combined with the gentleness of a woman and formed her unique temperament. "Get down." Hua Qingtong pushed him gently, thinking what would happen if her sister woke up and saw it. Unfortunately, she couldn't move him even after pushing a few times. Song Qingshu grabbed her hand tightly and looked aggrieved. "I'm tired enough from the journey. It's uncomfortable to sleep on the floor. Do you really have the heart to do that? Come on, do you think I don't know what you're thinking?" Hua Qingtong was embarrassed and angry. Song Qingshu moved closer to her. "Then tell me what I'm thinking." Even though the two of them had already had physical contact, Hua Qingtong was still not used to such intimate contact. She tilted her head slightly and said softly, "Then why did you watch me make the bed for you just now?" Song Qingshu smiled embarrassedly. "I was afraid that you wouldn't do anything if I mentioned it directly." Hua Qingtong's cheeks turned red. She felt her face burning. "So you're insatiable." Song Qingshu's fingers gently stroked her smooth and white face. He smiled and said, "In the end, you still feel sorry for me. You can't bear to chase me down." Hua Qingtong's body trembled. She twisted her body and moved further in. She whispered, "You can stay here, but you're not allowed to do anything naughty." "Okay." Song Qingshu agreed immediately. After a while, Hua Qingtong suddenly froze in the darkness. "You promised not to do anything naughty. Is hugging you considered mischievous?" Song Qingshu said innocently. "Then where are your hands?" Hua Qingtong bit her lips gently. Her face was as red as blood. "Hee, it was a mistake. It was completely spontaneous. It had nothing to do with me." After a while, Hua Qingtong's voice trembled. "What about now?" "I'll just rub." Hua Qingtong's heart was thumping hard. Girls who had just had physical contact with their lovers were often very clingy. Actually, she did not mind and was even looking forward to being intimate with him. However, her younger sister was still asleep at the side. She wanted to call him out, but where could the two of them go in the middle of the night? The innkeeper had said that there were no other rooms available. She could only clench her teeth and endure it with a red face. She didn't want to disturb her younger sister and make everyone feel awkward. The next morning, when the group of people woke up for breakfast, Kazli could not help but ask Hua Qingtong, "Sister, did you hear any strange sounds last night?" Hua Qingtong's heart skipped a beat. She looked at Zhou, Zhuo, and the rest guiltily, her face burning. "No, maybe you're dreaming." "Oh." Kazli was simple-minded and did not question much. However, the way she looked at Song Qingshu became a little strange. Zhuo, who was at the side, secretly pinched Song Qingshu's thigh under the table. However, she was still chatting cheerfully with the other women at the table. Song Qingshu was also very depressed. He thought to himself, "You were the one who chased me out last night. Why are you pinching me now?" Recalling everything that had happened last night, especially the unique light and elegant fragrance from Kazli's body, which seemed to be the most stimulating drug in the world, Song Qing-shu could not help but secretly click his tongue. Being able to cause the downfall of a nation was just an adjective, but Casley let him see that such an existence really existed in the world. Such a woman was enough to make any emperor in the world go crazy. After the group finished their breakfast, they continued on their way. Along the way, the women seemed to be mingling together. No one knew what they were talking about, but they often let out all sorts of bell-like giggles. Song Qing-shu was like an outsider. He could not interrupt at all and could only let them be. However, he was too bored along the way, so he dragged Casley along to learn how to speak Chinese. Casley also learned Chinese from him. However, it was obvious that her aptitude in learning was not as good as the other parties. Out of 10 sentences of Chinese that Song Qing-shu could learn, she could only learn one sentence. However, why would he care about the progress of her studies when he was conversing with such a beautiful and fragrant girl? Just listening to her speak was an extreme enjoyment, because Casley's temperament was too pure and innocent. Even if her beauty could cause the downfall of a nation, it would not make people feel that she was aggressive. The other women unconsciously treated her like a younger sister. They did not mind her staying with Song Qing-shu and were even worried that she would be bullied. The group hurried on their way. They entered the country from Hanzhong and went south via Shangyong. They directly rented a large ship and took the water route. Noticing that the passenger ship belonged to the Ruan family, Song Qing-shu lamented that the Ruan family's business was getting bigger and bigger. He recalled the time when he and Ying entered Sichuan by water and were replaced by Madame Ruan. Although it was very dangerous at that time, now that he thought about it, he still took advantage of it. Thinking of Madame Ruan's soft and plump body that was like cotton, a smile appeared on the corner of Song Qing-shu's lips. When he was free, he had to enter Sichuan to see the mother and daughter. He did not know whether she had lost weight or not. Because the South and the South were not accustomed to the climate, Casley and Hua Qingtong were a little seasick. Yuan Zi was taking care of them. When Song Qing-shu came out of the cabin, he noticed that Zhou Zhuo was standing at the side of the ship and staring blankly at Han Zui. The river wind blew her white dress and black hair, attracting the attention of many people nearby. "What are you thinking about?" Song Qing-shu walked to her side and put a coat on her. Zhou Zhuo sighed faintly. "When I was young, I made a living by fishing with my father by the Han River. Although it was hard and tiring, the days were truly carefree. At that time, my father never told me his identity. It's a pity that he died at the hands of the Yuan dynasty soldiers, despite his lofty aspirations." Song Qing-shu held her cold hand and comforted her in a soft voice. "These years, we have killed many Mongolian soldiers. Even Temujin has been beheaded. I think this should be enough to comfort your spirit in heaven." "Yes, thank you, Qing-shu." Zhou Zhuo snuggled in his arms with a gentle smile on her face. Looking at the fishing boat not far away, Zhou Zhuo said, "When I was a child, I also met Zhang Wuji by Han Zui. If only I met you at that time, then there would not be so many messy twists and turns." Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. "At that time, I might not have been able to enter Miss Zhou's eyes." Zhou Zhuo pursed her lips into a smile. "If that's true." The two of them snuggled together and told each other about their experiences in the past few days. Ever since they reunited, the two of them had never had a heart-to-heart talk like this. Time passed without them noticing. Zhou Zhuo leaned in his arms, her heart filled with warmth and peace. "Right, Miss Yuan. What do you plan to do?" "What do you mean, what?" Song Qing-shu was surprised. Zhou Zhuo rolled her eyes at him. "You already know the answer. She's a girl who followed you all the way from the desert to Jiangnan. Shouldn't you say something?" "What can I say?" Song Qing-shu bitterly smiled. "It's not like you don't know that your husband is a womanizer. She has some feelings for me now, but she might regret it when she calms down in the future. So it's better if I don't harm her." Zhou Zhiruo spat. "You don't mean what you say. Since you don't want to harm her, why do you provoke her? Haven't you noticed that she smiles less and less these days? Obviously, she is worried about personal gains and losses. You're her senior sister, so you should enlighten her more," Song Qing-shu replied. "How can I enlighten her?" Zhou Zhiruo snorted. But she suddenly thought of something and changed her tone. Well, leave it to me. After saying that, she struggled out of his arms excitedly and went to find Yuan Zi excitedly. Song Qing-shu was a little puzzled. He didn't know why she was so happy. Yuan Zi heard Zhou Zhuo's intention in the room. She answered hesitantly, I'm willing to talk with you all night. You can teach me a lot of things, but what about Brother Song? He will have no place to sleep. Zhou Zhuo answered directly, Don't worry. How can he have no place to sleep? There are many empty rooms in the cabin. Besides, he can sleep in Qingtong's room. Yuan Zi was shocked. But Sister Hua is with Casley. Zhou Zhuo looked at her with a faint smile. I don't believe that you didn't notice it on the way. Yuan Zi blushed. How could she not know that they were traveling and living together? Thinking of her embarrassing identity, she sighed secretly. Chapter 2497. In the evening, Song Qing-shu went to visit Hua Qingtong and Casley, while Yuan Zi and Zhou Zhuo had a heart-to-heart talk. Originally, Yuan Zi was a little afraid of Song Qing-shu. After all, Song Qing-shu was her senior sister and the first wife, which made Yuan Zi feel inferior. However, during the whole process, Zhou Zhuo's attitude was quite gentle, which made Yuan Zi less nervous and smile more. The two women took off their clothes and whispered to each other on the bed. As their relationship grew closer, Zhou Zhuo seized the opportunity to ask, Sister Zi, what do you think of Qing-shu? Yuan Zi answered subconsciously, Brother Song is able to bring peace to the country, is kind to others, and is so young. He is really a wonderful man in the world. She added in her heart, except that he is a little lecherous. Ladies' fragrant dresses for my love reading net. Please visit. Mobile phone, please visit. Zhou Zhuo said with a smile, just praise him. I think he's just a greedy and lecherous guy. Yuan Zi had the same feeling, and the two women immediately exchanged numerous thoughts on this topic. Zhou Zhuo suddenly asked, Sister Zi, how about we really be sisters? Yuan Zi was startled and blushed instantly. She hurriedly waved her hand and said, Senior sister, please don't misunderstand me. There is nothing between Brother Song and me. Is that so? But why did I hear that you were seen by that bastard several times? Zhou Zhuo said with a smile that was not a smile. Yuan Zi's face was very hot. That was an accident. He did it to save me. Zhou Zhuo smiled. All right, you don't need to explain. I've been through it, and I understand. After a pause, she added, Actually, you don't need to worry about it. I don't mind it. He has so many confidants. If I get jealous and angry with each of them, I'm afraid I'll die of anger. Yuan Zi said timidly, Brother Song, you do have a lot of female friends. Zhou Zhuo held her hand and said, You are different from others. You belong to the Amei faction. To some extent, we are on the same side. If I don't help you, who should I help? Thank you, senior sister apprentice, but you really don't need to, Yuan Zi said with a timid tone. After whispering to each other for a while, Zhou Zhuo said, Go to the bathroom. You sleep first. Yuan Zi answered. Thinking of what Gu Changle had said to her just now, her heart pounded and her face burned. Zhou Zhuo put on her clothes and went to another room. Song Qing-shu was reading a stack of secret letters at the desk. She asked curiously, What are you reading? Song Qing-shu looked up at the beautiful woman at the door and said with a smile, It's some information from Linen. I want to gather all the information. I want to speculate what's going on there. There were many sources of information, and each of them had their own focus. Usually, they only knew the details of the matter. What Song Qing-shu needed to do was to gather all the information and speculate the whole picture of the matter. Don't be too tired. It's late now. Come to sleep early later. Zhou Zhuo greeted him at the door and did not come in. Okay. Song Qing-shu agreed casually. After a while, he realized, Are you asking me to sleep in your room? Zhou Zhuo pursed her lips and smiled. If you don't want to come, then forget it. I will. Why not? Song Qing-shu looked excited. On the way here, he almost made the situation that the three monks had no water to eat. On the boat, his trick was seen through, so he had to sleep alone. This was the first time that Zhou Zhuo had allowed him to enter her room. Seeing that he was impatient to stand up, Zhou blushed and said, "I won't run. I'll come back after I finish my business. I don't want to be called a femme fatale in the future. All right, if it gets too late and I fall asleep, lower your voice and don't wake me up." Song Qingshu nodded and returned his attention to the secret letters. There were many sources of secret information, such as the Prince of Cheese Mansion, the Golden Serpent Camp, the Sticky Branch, the Laundry Yard, the Five Lakes Gate, the brothel, and other places of low order. He knew that Ren Yingying was safe and sound. As for why the Prince of Cheese Mansion seemed to not exist during the coup, she did not explain in detail, only saying that they would talk when they met. It seemed that she was worried that the secret would be leaked. It seems that there are other secrets. Song Qingshu stroked the stubble at the corner of his lips, deep in thought. Initially, he thought that Ren Yingying and the rest were caught unprepared, which was why the Jia family and the Shi family got what they wanted. But now, it seemed that it was not that simple. As for the reason why the Jia family risked their lives to rebel, he knew that Shui Baochai was suspicious in Xixia. She sent someone to find Song Si and found out that he did not know Jia Baoyu. In a panic, Shui Baochai went to the Jia clan to seek confirmation. Over time, the Jia clan became suspicious. Later on, they confirmed that the real Jia Baoyu was dead through some unknown channel. As a result, the last hope of the Jia clan was shattered. They knew that the imperial court would settle accounts with them sooner or later because of the dragon slaying on Wutang Mountain. Jia Baoyu became the emperor's son-in-law of Xixia, so they could attack and defend at will. But now it turned out that all their efforts were in vain. As the saying goes, a corner dog will jump over a wall. Finally, the Jia family decided to take the risk. Although Jia Shidao was dead, the power of the Jia family could not be underestimated. With the help of the LV family in Xiangyang and the Shi family, the situation changed completely in a short time. What on earth is the Shi family doing this? Song Qingshu tapped the table with his fingertips, feeling very confused. The Jia family was cornered, but there was no other way. The Shi family was like the sun in the sky, so it was not necessary to take such a risk. Although the Jia and Shi families were related by marriage, how could they participate in this kind of disaster, which would lead to the death of 9 generations, just because they were related by marriage? Recalling that Shi Miyuan's fiancé for his daughter Shi Shangyun was Wei Ruolin, the top scholar, the Shi family's intelligence network probably knew that Wei Ruolin was the descendant of Chai Rong. Considering their secret layout in the Jiangnan beggar gang, it could be totally determined that the Shi family had always been disloyal, and this time they were using the Jia family. But compared with these, Song Qingshu was most curious about Guijing. With Guijing's character, how could he participate in this kind of usurpation? Unfortunately, there was no relevant information in the intelligence. It only revealed that Fu Yaohong of the Tianming cult and Tang Sire of the White Lotus cult were involved in this matter, and there seemed to be traces of the Xiaoyao school. Song Qingshu looked a little pale. No wonder the Jia and Shi families succeeded in the coup so easily, because he mainly relied on the people of the Vulture Palace to control the Imperial Palace, and Tang Sire of the White Lotus cult was actually Fu Mini of the Vulture Palace. If she instigated the Vulture Palace to rebel, the Imperial City could be said to be defenseless against the Jia and Shi families. But did Fu Mini have the ability to instigate the entire Vulture Palace to rebel? Song Qingshu still couldn't believe it until now. The whole thing revealed great strangeness. In the letter that Ren Yingying gave him, she also mentioned that the water in Lin was too muddy and there were many undercurrents surging, so she didn't know how many forces were hiding in the shadows. It seems that I can only wait until I reach the Jiangnan to know what exactly happened. During this period of time, the continuous flow of intelligence made Song Qingshu understand more and more about what happened in Linen, and at the same time, his heart also became more and more puzzled. Unknowingly, it was already late when dealing with these intelligence reports. Song Qingshu stretched and decided to rest first. Thinking of Zhou Zhirua's smile before she left, he felt incomparably hot inside. Hurrying to Zhou Zhirua's room, he noticed that the light in the room had been turned off. He was startled. Could it be that she's already asleep? Thinking of her previous entrustment, he didn't dare to disturb her. He gently pushed the door and found that the door was open. He couldn't help but smile. It seems that Giroir still knows how to care for others. In the distance, a hazy figure with a graceful figure was lying on the bed. Her breathing was quiet, and it was obvious that she was fast asleep. Song Qing-shu was worried that he would wake her up, so he closed the door and quietly walked to the bed. He took off his clothes and got into bed. Recently, I've been a bit stuck. I have to think about some details in Lin. How can it be reasonable and without any obvious flaws? End of this chapter. For the fastest and error-free reading, please visit for mobile. Please visit Apex. Chapter 2498. Song Qing-shu burrowed under the blankets, and as usual, his hand slipped beneath the hem of her robes and pulled her into his embrace. Giroir. If it was in the past, he might not have been able to detect anything when his blood rushed to his head. However, with his current cultivation, he could see things in the dark as if it was daytime. Moreover, he often didn't just use his eyes to sense people. He could also remember a person's qi. What's more, the size was different. Ahem, the fragrance was different too. He immediately found something abnormal. Miss Yuan? Yuan Zi had been waiting for Zhou Zhuo to come back, but Zhou Zhuo didn't come back. Therefore, she fell asleep in a daze. When she was suddenly hugged by someone, her first reaction was that Zhou Zhuo had come back. She thought, why did my senior sister do this? However, she immediately realized that the breath of the person beside her was different, and his hands were definitely not that of a woman. Thinking that a man hugged her like this, she woke up all her sleepiness at once. When she was about to exclaim and attack him with her palm, she froze when she heard his voice. Brother Song? Song Qing-shu looked at the door subconsciously and thought that he had gone to the wrong place. However, after looking at the room, he found that there was no mistake. Why are you here? Where's Giroir? Yuan Zi's mind went blank. She answered subconsciously. My senior sister asked me to come here and sleep with her tonight. She just said that she needed to go to the toilet. Hearing the other party's incoherent speech, Song Qing-shu immediately understood what was going on. It was most likely Giroir's scheme to matchmake the two of them. He carefully explained, well, Miss Yuan, I'm really sorry. I didn't expect that it was you. Yuan Zi's trembling voice came in the dark. Brother Song, can you take your hands off me first? Sorry, I didn't react in time. Song Qing-shu hurriedly took back his hands. In order to cover up his embarrassment, he sat up from the bed and flicked his fingers. A stream of pure yang genuine qi shot into the oil lamp. Soon, the room was bright again. As the light was turned on, Yuan Zi's flushed face appeared. She grabbed the quilt to cover her chest and looked at him with a grievance. Her eyes were watery as if tears would fall down at any time. Song Qing-shu felt a headache coming on. I'm really sorry. I swear to God, I really didn't mean it. I know, Yuan Zi suddenly said. Song Qing-shu was stunned. Huh? Yuan Zi let out a sigh gloomily. If I'm not mistaken, senior sister apprentice must have set it up. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but say, well, I didn't do it out of bad intentions. Don't blame her for this. In the end, it's all my fault. He was worried that the other party would bear a grudge against Zhou Zhuo. That would be troublesome. Yuan Zi shook her head. Senior sister apprentice must have set us up. How could I blame her? It's just. She was smart. Thinking of Zhou Zhuo's hints, she instantly understood what was going on tonight. Thinking that Song Qing-shu did it for her own good, she naturally wouldn't hold a grudge against him. However, she was a virgin after all, and it was a little scary for her to do that. Thinking of something, she became sadder and sadder as she spoke. Big drops of tears fell down her cheeks. Song Qing-shu immediately panicked. Well, don't cry like I really bullied you. Yuan Zi glanced at him with hidden bitterness, thinking, how could you say you didn't bully me just now? Thinking of this, she burst into more tears. Song Qing-shu sucked in a breath of cold air. In the end, it's all because of my hands. Why don't you slash me a few times to vent your anger? As he spoke, he stretched out both his hands. Yuan Zi spat. You know I won't slash you, but you still did it on purpose. Song Qingshu smiled embarrassedly and grabbed a small stool. I really don't want my hands to be broken. How about you smash me with the stool? In this way, I won't break my hands, and you can vent your anger. Yuan Zi took the stool and bit her lips. Then I'll smash you for real. Song Qingshu looked like he was ready to die a martyr. Go ahead. In order to apologize, I won't run my martial arts to resist. Yuan Zi held the stool and made a few gestures. Finally, she threw it aside and sighed. Forget it. Song Qingshu approached her. Miss Yuan, are you reluctant to do that? Yuan Zi turned her face to him. Anyway, you've seen what I should and shouldn't have seen and touched what I should and shouldn't have. It's meaningless for me to beat you again. Hearing the loneliness in her tone, Song Qingshu was stunned. Then he remembered what they had done before. Although they were all accidents, they were indeed more intimate than many couples. Now, he couldn't let the woman take the initiative to say anything. He directly grabbed her shoulders and made her face him. Looking at her big, tearful eyes, he said in a low voice, I'm a playboy. I didn't express my feelings before because I was afraid of delaying you. But after thinking about it, I think it's too hypocritical. If you really choose someone else, I can't stand it. So, if you agree, I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. Yuan Zi trembled all over. She didn't expect that he would suddenly say these things to her. The window paper between them was finally broken. Her heart was beating fast, but she still couldn't help saying, what if I don't agree? As soon as she said these words, she regretted it. She had been envious of Casley's pure nature, who could say whatever she thought without any scruples. She had warned herself many times in her heart that sometimes she shouldn't lose her temper and say something against her will. In the end, she would suffer losses. But at the last moment, she still couldn't change this habit. She slightly opened her red lips and wanted to explain. However, she had always been proud. She thought it was a bit shameful that her grandfather sent her here. She shouldn't make it seem that she was in a hurry to stick to him. At worst, I can go back to inherit my master's mantle and become a monk completely. Thinking of that kind of ending, a trace of sadness appeared on her face. Song Qingshu was also stunned. Obviously, he didn't expect this answer from her. However, after getting along with her for so long, he roughly knew what kind of person she was. He said with a smile, it doesn't matter if you don't agree. Anyway, I won't allow you to marry anyone except me. Yuan Zi never thought that he would be so overbearing. However, this overbearing made her completely relaxed, because she didn't need to struggle anymore and take the initiative to express her feelings. Song Qingshu gently held the chin of the girl in front of him. He had to admit that Yuan Zi was really beautiful. Her thin eyebrows were as light as a distant mountain. Her phoenix eyes looked more delicate and charming because she had just shed tears. The skin on her face was as pure as the first snow. Her rosy and delicate cherry lips looked more tender and charming under the candlelight, making people unable to resist biting them. Feeling that his face was getting closer and closer to her, Yuan Zi's mind went blank. Should she refuse him? What if he really misunderstood that she didn't like him? But if she didn't refuse, would it seem that she was too unreserved? She struggled inwardly, but her eyes slowly closed. Only her slightly trembling eyelashes showed how restless she was at this time. A few days ago, it was longer. Many readers said that the pace was too fast. Now, wouldn't it seem too slow if he took it slowly? Chapter 2499. Their bodies were getting closer and closer. The girl's body fragrance and the man's masculine breath intertwined. Finally, Yuan Zi's lips were kissed gently, and her body was pressed on the bed. The girl's heart seemed to have a little deer running around. Her white face blushed. She closed her eyes and shyly catered to his kiss, wholeheartedly giving the best of herself to the man in front of her. Unknowingly, her clothes had already slowly slid down from her shoulders. Because her skin was too delicate and smooth, there was almost no stagnation. Her well-proportioned snow-white body was revealed to him without any concealment. Her snow-white skin seemed to have a layer of rouge, gradually being smeared with a layer of captivating red. Her breathing also became hot and rapid. When a man broke through her last defense, Yuanzi hugged her lover tightly. The next day, Zhou sat on the bed and visited the blushing girl. "Sister Z, will you blame me?" Yuanzi blushed. "Senior sister, you did it for my sake. How could I blame you?" Saying this, she struggled to sit up. After all, it was not polite to talk while lying down. However, the strange feeling in her body made her frown and subconsciously freeze. Zhou came over and helped her sleep again. "Don't get up. The guy is always like this. He doesn't know how to be tender to women. Have good rest." Yuanzi felt that her cheeks were burning. Looking at Zhou's slender waist at a close distance, a thought suddenly came to her mind. "Senior sister, you are so slender. Can you really bear brother Song?" "Oh, what am I thinking about?" The two girls talked about something private on the bed, and there was a tinkling laughter from time to time. Later, Hui Qingtong and Casley also came to visit her. Obviously, they had also got the news, which made Yuanzi so embarrassed that she wished there was a hole to hide in. However, their relationship was originally very good. They were sisters who grew up together in the southern border. Their apprehensive hearts slowly calmed down. At this moment, Hui Qingtong's emotions were also very complicated. She had always been proud and arrogant. She had never thought that there would be a day when she would share her lover with another woman. However, when the time came, she did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. Could it be that Brother Song was too powerful? A man like this, at such a young age, was already at the pinnacle of martial arts and was in control of the world. With a flip of his hand, he could summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. Presumably, no woman would think that she could monopolize him. "Sister Hua, what are you thinking about?" Yuanzi's voice woke her up. "It's nothing." Hui Qingtong smiled. He thought to himself that Zi was not an outsider anyway. He just didn't know if the other girls in Jiangnan were easy to get along with. Anyway, no one could bully Casley. However, with Casley's appearance and personality, no one would bully her. In the following days, the large ship entered the Yangtze River from the Han River and traveled down the river. Although it was not as exaggerated as traveling 1,000 li in a day in Jiangling, the overall speed was not slow, and they were getting closer and closer to Jiangnan. Because Yuanzi and Hui Qingtong had been brought together, Zhou did not refuse Song Qingshu to enter her room. The couple reunited after a long separation, and it was really a good rain after a long drought. Song Qingshu did not know why his body also had an inexplicable desire for Zhou. After thinking about it, this must be the original wife's obsession. Zhou also changed her previous shyness and tried her best to please him every time. As long as he had a request, she would satisfy him without reservation. It really made Song Qingshu feel that he was living in heaven. "I want a child." One night, when Zhou was aroused, she hugged him tightly and whispered in his ear. Song Qingshu also felt that it was a bit unreasonable that he had some illegitimate children outside, but the original wife did not have one. Moreover, whether it was Song Bai or Madame Ruan, because of various reasons, he could not bear the surname Song, which had always been a regret in his heart. But there was no such problem on Zhou's side, so he sweated and irrigated her without reservation. All the way to Jiangnan. After arriving at Zhenjiang, Song Qingshu and Zhou finally parted ways. They had already discussed on the way. First, Zhou would return to Yangzhou City to mobilize troops and wait for an opportunity, and he would go to Lin and to investigate the situation there. Although a lot of middle-level generals in Yangzhou had been promoted, there had been no suitable candidate for the commander-in-chief. Zhou was not good at leading troops to fight, so she asked Hui Qingtong to help. Hui Qingtong naturally agreed happily. What she was most afraid of was being raised in a boudoir after arriving in Jiangnan. Like in the legends, where the concubine stayed alone in the palace and wasted her youth. Now that she could show her strength, she naturally could not ask for more. For her, the battlefield could always bring her extreme excitement and space to show her strength. Because the trip to Lin was full of danger, Casley was also brought to Yangzhou by Hua Qingtong's side. After things stabilized in the future, she would meet up with Song Qingshu. During this period of time, the two sides had been together day and night. Casley was already able to communicate with Song Qingshu on a daily basis. Of course, the main reason was that Song Qingshu had learned more Chinese, and Casley was still slower in learning Chinese. Although she was very reluctant to part with him, she was also very sensible and did not want to delay the business of her sweetheart. She said goodbye to Song Qingshu with tears in her eyes and set off on the journey north to Yangzhou with Zhou Zhiruo and Hua Qingtong. Yuan Zi was left by Zhou Zhiruo to take care of Song Qingshu's daily life. Originally, Song Qingshu thought it was unnecessary, but because of the incident of the golden wave flower, which made Zhou Zhiruo have a lingering fear, she would send someone to take care of Song Qingshu as long as the conditions allowed. Yuan Zi's martial arts were originally not weak. During this period of time on the ship, Zhou Zhiruo systematically taught her the martial arts of the Amaze sect. With Song Qingshu's guidance from time to time, her martial arts improved by leaps and bounds. In the whole Jianghu, she could be regarded as a first-class master below the guru. With her taking care of Yuan Zi, Zhou Zhiruo was relieved. Yuan Zi had just had a physical relationship with Song Qingshu, and they were most attached to each other. Naturally, she was willing to take on this task. They went all the way south. Not long after, they heard the news that the crown prince gathered troops in Huzhou and called for the rescue of the emperor. Huzhou. Song Qingshu thought of something. At that time, Shuang wanted to go back to the Zhuang family in Huzhou to keep vigil for Master Zhuang. However, there was no news from her after they parted. It just so happened that he would pass by Huzhou on his way south to Lin and could visit her. As for the crown prince, Song Qingshu recalled that when he came to Lin, the old pedants of the crown prince gave him a lot of trouble, but they were all solved by him. Now that Lin was in great changes, he came out to call for the rescue of the emperor. He could be regarded as a competent crown prince. However, how could the Jia and Shi families let such an important person escape? Besides, how many troops could the crown prince gather in Huzhou? Therefore, he took Yuan Zi all the way south, crossed Taihu Lake, and came to Huzhou. He thought that this place would be heavily guarded with banners covering the sky. After all, it was the stronghold of the crown prince for the rescue of the emperor. However, after entering the city, the whole city was extraordinarily quiet. There were still people coming and going on the streets, and there were peddlers everywhere. It seemed to be no different from the usual towns. What about the rebellion? What about the rescue of the emperor? It doesn't look like it. Song Qingshu had no clue after thinking about it. He planned to go to the Zhuang family to see if he could get any information. What kind of meeting will I arrange for Shuang or next? I guess you can't guess it. Chapter 2500. The Zhuang family was a big family in Huzhou, so it was easy to find it. The two of them soon arrived outside the Zhuang family. Fearing that their whereabouts would be exposed, Song Qingshu did not ask anyone to inform them. Instead, he quietly climbed over the wall with Yuan Zi and entered directly from the backyard. Perhaps because of the Ming Shi case, the Zhuang family had few people now, and there was no one in the backyard. After walking for a while, Song Qingshu suddenly found a little girl in front of him. She was about 2 or 3 years old and was playing in the yard. He could not help but be stunned. How could there be such a little girl in the Zhuang family? At this time, the little girl also saw them and asked in a childish voice, "Who are you?" Song Qingshu smiled slightly and said, "Little girl, why are you here alone? Where are your parents?" The little girl tilted her head and answered, "My mother is inside." "Who are you? Why haven't I seen you before?" Song Qingshu had come here for an important matter, but when he saw the little girl, he felt that she was cute for no reason. He squatted down in front of her and said, "We're looking for a girl named Shuang. Do you know her?" Shuang, this name sounds familiar. The little girl scratched her head and was obviously a little confused. "Oh, I remember. My mother seems to be called Shuang." Song Qingshu's cultivation had already reached the realm where he would not change his expression even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. He thought that he could deal with any situation extremely calmly. But when he suddenly heard this little girl said that her mother was called Shuang, he was instantly shocked. Yuan-zi, who was beside him, blinked her eyes. On the way here, she had roughly learned the relationship between Shuang, and Brother Song. What was going on? Bauer, who are you talking to? At this time, a soft female voice suddenly sounded in the house. Before they met, they knew how gentle and obedient the other party was. An uncle said he was looking for an aunt called Shuang. The little girl's speech was not very clear, but it was really unusual for her to express her meaning so clearly at such a young age. A low cry came from inside, and then a white figure leaped out of the house. His first reaction was to protect the little girl behind him. When he saw Song Qingshu's appearance clearly, he couldn't help but be startled. His face revealed an expression of surprise and joy, and he was momentarily speechless. Yuan-zi looked at her carefully and found that the petite girl in front of her had curved eyebrows and a small mouth. She looked pretty and cute, just like how Brother Song and Senior Sister described her. Shuang, or Song Qingshu's mouth was a little dry. The two of them had been separated for several years. Although he had his reasons for running around all these years, he had not come to find her all these years. He was really a scumbag. Big Brother Song, Shuang subconsciously wanted to throw herself into his arms, but for some reason, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her expression was somewhat complicated. Mother, who is he? The little girl at the side blinked her big eyes. As if awakening from a dream, Shuang hastily said, Bauer, quickly greet Daddy. Daddy? Hearing this news, not to mention Yuan-zi, even Song Qingshu was startled. He never expected that he would get such a big surprise after such a long time. Is your name Song Qingshu? The little girl looked at Song Qingshu with puzzlement, and her eyes were full of curiosity. Ah, yes. Song Qingshu had not digested this news, so he answered subconsciously. Ah, it's really Daddy. After getting the confirmation, the little girl jumped into his arms joyfully, holding her petite body in his arms. Song Qingshu suddenly had a feeling that they were connected by blood. He couldn't help hugging her tightly, as if he was afraid that she would disappear once he let go of her. Daddy, why haven't you come to see me these years? The little girl blinked her eyes and suddenly asked, I have a lot of things to deal with. Song Qingshu couldn't go on for a while. He couldn't say that he didn't know her existence, could he? It would be too incompetent to be a father. Shuang squatted down and stroked her daughter's head gently. Bauer, I have a lot of things to deal with. Now I come to see you. The little girl said, I thought you lied to me before. It turns out that I really have a father. Song Qingshu felt that his voice was a little choked with sobs. Shuang, what's going on? Why didn't you inform me? Shuang smiled slightly. Brother Song, you have so many things to deal with, and I don't want to disturb you. Yuan-zi showed a puzzled look on her face. How could she not tell her father that she had given birth to a child? This reason was a bit unreasonable. However, it was really strange that the little girl told him that she was indeed Brother Song's daughter. Song Qingshu didn't doubt it at all. At the first sight of this little girl, he had a feeling of closeness and affection. He didn't understand the feeling of blood connection before, but now he finally understood it. Holding the little girl in his arms, Song Qingshu asked Shuang while playing with her. Only then did he know that Shuang found that she was pregnant soon after she returned to Huzhou after parting with him last time. Then, she gave birth to her daughter. Fortunately, there were many orphans and widows in the Zhuang family who had a lot of experience in this aspect. They took care of her one by one, and the whole process was smooth. Thank you for your hard work these days. Although Shuang didn't say it, Song Qingshu could imagine how hard it was for a little girl to get pregnant suddenly. Fortunately, it was in the environment of the Zhuang family. If it was outside, she might be destroyed by the gossip of the people around her. He had been wondering why she didn't come to see him, even if she sent someone to inform him. She just bore all this alone. Is it because I have too many lovers around me, and she doesn't want to get involved in this mess? Brother Song, who is this girl? After chatting for a while, Shuang suddenly looked at Yuan-zi beside her. Yuan-zi blushed and said hurriedly, Sister Shuang, my name is Yuan-zi. although seemed to be a little younger than her. After all, she had married first and had a child. So, she naturally called her sister humbly. Was startled and hurriedly helped her up. Miss Yuan, you don't have to be so polite. I'm afraid I'm a little younger than you. How dare I call you sister? After chatting for a while, they gradually became familiar with each other, and the atmosphere was not as awkward as at the beginning. Song Qing-shu kissed his daughter and felt that the child's face was particularly delicate and lovely. He hurriedly asked, "By the way, have you named her Bao? I heard you call her Bao just now." Shuang nodded slightly and touched her daughter's head dotingly. Then, she looked at him and said, "Yes, I named her Xiaobao. After all, I feel sorry for Xiaobao. This way, I can make up for the guilt in my heart." "Brother Song, you don't mind, do you?" Song Qing-shu sighed. "Of course I don't mind. After all, and Wei Xiaobao had a deep relationship, and they were husband and wife." She had always felt guilty about Wei Xiaobao. Presumably, this was the main reason why she hadn't contacted him all these years. But won't it be a little strange if she has the same name as Brother Wei? Song Qing-shu couldn't help saying. He had been messing around with other people's wives all these years, and now he got what he deserved. None of his 3 children took his surname. It was really a sin. Blinked and said, "Ah, her surname is Song. Why does she have the same name?" Song Qing-shu was pleasantly surprised. Really? He had never expected that would be willing to let her daughter take his surname. He had always respected the opinions of women. Whether it was Song Bai or Madame Ruan, they all agreed to let their children take their husband's surnames for their sake. Pursed her lips and smiled. "Of course it's true. This is your daughter. I'm very grateful that you agreed to call her Xiaobao. How could you change her surname?" "Xiaobao, my good daughter, Song Xiaobao. My good daughter, Song Xiaobao." Song Qing-shu was in the middle of kissing, hugging, and lifting his daughter up high when his expression suddenly froze. "Song Xiaobao, what the hell? What's wrong?" Shuang noticed his expression and asked curiously. "No, she can't be called this name." Song Qing-shu was speechless. He thought that his good daughter had the same name as the Northeast F4, especially the image of that person. He felt that he couldn't accept it. "Oh." Shuang who had been staring at his expression, heard him say this, and there was a trace of sadness and struggle in her eyes. Song Qing-shu hurriedly said, "Shuang you can give her any name, but the name Xiaobao with my surname is really a bit." Shuang said, "Okay, I got it." Song Qing-shu was stunned. Originally, he thought that she would argue for what was right, but he didn't expect that she would agree so easily, which made him feel extremely guilty. He knew that Shuang had always been very gentle, but she was considerate, which didn't mean that she wouldn't be sad. He wanted to comfort her, but the name Song Xiaobao was so exaggerated that he really couldn't accept it. Yuanzi saw that the atmosphere was a little heavy, so she hurriedly changed the topic. "By the way, Sister Shuang, I heard that the Crown Prince raised troops in Huzhou and called the whole country to help the Emperor. Why can't we feel the atmosphere of war when we entered Huzhou?" Chapter 2501. The Crown Prince. Shuang thought for a while and said, "It seems that Pan Ruin and Pan Bing of the Pan family in Huzhou supported the Crown Prince to be the Emperor and called on all the people in the world to help the Emperor. However, they only had about 100 servants, so they were suppressed almost on the same day. The main figures were killed, and the Crown Prince was escorted back to Lin." Song Qing-shu and Yuanzi were both confused. The former heard that the Crown Prince called on all the people in Huzhou to help the Emperor and thought that it would be a great event. However, it was suppressed in an instant. The latter was very surprised. The smallest tribe on the grassland could gather about 100 warriors. How could the Crown Prince of such a big country only have so few people under his command? "That's not right," Song Qing-shu said in a low voice. "The Crown Prince is not an idiot. It is impossible that he does not know the strength of the imperial court. There are only 100 or so house servants. Why would he agree to revolt?" He had dealt with the Crown Prince in Lin and before. Although the Crown Prince's means were a little hasty, They were definitely above average. He had made him a little anxious several times. He would never be so unwise. Shuang shook her head and said, I don't know the specific reason. Song Qing-shu murmured to himself. It seems that we can only find out what is going on when we get to Linen. This matter revealed all kinds of strange things. No wonder Ren Yingying said in the secret letter that there seemed to be a hidden big hand controlling everything. Are you leaving again? Shuang asked in a low voice. Song Qing-shu said, and told her roughly what happened in Linen. At the same time, he was full of regret. He could have taken her with him, but now he had a daughter. It was too unsafe to take her to Linen. Yuan Zi said, It's late. Why don't we rest here for a night before leaving? Song Qing-shu naturally had no objection. He also wanted to be closer to Shuang and her daughter. Soon the third young mistress of the Zhuang family was also informed. Of course, in order to avoid leaking the secret, only a few people in the Zhuang family knew that he was coming. When Song Qing-shu rebuilt the Zhuang family, the third young mistress was naturally very grateful to him and received them very warmly. During the meal, Song Qing-shu kept hugging his daughter, unwilling to let go. Shuang, who was at the side, saw how close they were, and her eyes were filled with tenderness. All right, why don't we just call her Bao instead of Xiao Bao? There's a guy called Song Xiaobao in my hometown, and it's really not a good name for a girl. The word treasure in Bao words can also express the meaning of remembrance. What do you think? Song Qing-shu said to Shuang. Shuang nodded. She had a complicated look on her face. Okay. After dinner, Song Bao kept pestering Song Qing-shu to play with her. Song Qing-shu had lived 2 lives, and this was the first time he had seen his own child. Naturally, he was overjoyed and kept her company. When it was time to sleep at night, Song Bao did not let go of his hand and insisted on sleeping with him. Shuang's face was slightly red. Speaking of which, the two of them hadn't been together for a long time, and after that, they had been separated for so many years. Even though they had given birth to a child, she was still embarrassed. However, in the end, he didn't refuse. At night, Song Bao pestered him to tell her stories. Song Qing-shu had all kinds of fairy tales and fables at his fingertips. She listened to him in a daze and soon fell asleep. He carried her to a small bed and covered her with a blanket. Then, Song Qing-shu returned to the bed and hugged the petite woman beside him. Shuang, it's been hard on you these days. I'm sorry. I didn't fulfill my responsibilities as a husband and a father. Shuang shook her head. It's not hard at all. Bao is very obedient. I don't think it's hard at all. Besides, I don't think we're married yet. Strictly speaking, you're not my husband yet. Seeing a trace of slyness in her eyes, Song Qing-shu pulled her into his arms. When I'm done with this, I'll officially marry you. I don't care about these things. Shuang smiled faintly and shook her head slightly. Song Qing-shu's fingers slid across her delicate eyebrows. Shuang, when I saw you this time, I felt that you were a little strange. Is there something on your mind? No. Maybe it's because we've been separated for too long. Shuang was shocked and hurriedly said. Song Qing-shu laughed and directly turned over and pressed on her. Then, shall we get familiar again? Shuang's face turned red, but she still gently spread her legs and hugged him tightly. Be quiet, don't wake Bao up. Seeing her obedient and gentle appearance, Song Qing-shu's heart swayed, and he passionately kissed her. Perhaps it was because they had been separated for too long, but Shuang was also very emotional. The two quickly hugged each other tightly, as if they wanted to release all the feelings they had after being separated for all these years at this moment. After an unknown amount of time, Shuang, who was blushing, endured the impact of the man on top of her while tightly hugging him. At the same time, she quietly reached her hand into the blanket and grabbed a dark steel dagger. The coolness from the dagger made her a little sober. She slowly moved to the back of the man on top of her. The whole process was as gentle as a docile wife, and it didn't attract the man's attention at all. The tip of the dagger was hanging on his back. An extremely complicated and struggling expression flashed in her eyes. The dark steel dagger could cut iron like mud. She knew that as long as she stabbed down, no matter how high the other's martial arts were, his back would be pierced and he would die. The man on top of her was concentrating on plowing her body and didn't have the slightest defense. If she wanted to kill him, she only had this one chance. But she didn't know why, but her hand trembled violently. Several times she wanted to stab down, but every time she took a step, she would stop. She tightly hugged the man on top of her, not letting him see the pain and struggle in her eyes. "Why don't you stab down?" Suddenly, the man's voice rang in her ears. Schwanger exclaimed and subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand, but the other party grabbed it. Song Qingshu looked at the dark steel dagger in her snow-white hand and secretly sighed. With his cultivation, how could he not notice the other party's action? However, he was a little surprised that the other party didn't stab down. "Wuyo Chinese Network, why do you want to kill me?" Even though Song Qingshu had a faint guess, he still didn't dare confirm it. These words seemed to break through her last line of defense. Schwanger's tears instantly flowed out of her eyes. "You killed Xiaobao." Song Qingshu secretly sighed. As expected, he had a premonition that he might die in Schwanger's hands one day. He didn't think that this day would really come. "How did you know?" Now that things had come to this, Song Qingshu didn't deny it. He also didn't want to be rude to her. Schwanger's white and clean face was full of tears, anger flickering in her eyes. That year, Xiaobao's death in Shengjing was strange. Actually, I had my suspicions from the beginning, but I didn't dare to think in that direction. After carefully analyzing it, that time, you and Xiaobao went on a mission together. After Xiaobao died, the one who benefited the most was you. No matter if it was your future in the Tsar's court, or me, these sisters, in the end, it all benefited you. All these years, you deliberately avoided me. Is this the reason? Song Qingshu sighed. That's right. Schwanger turned her face to the side and didn't make eye contact with him. That year, I sensed that it was possible that all of this was done by you. I didn't dare to think about it, so I used the excuse of guarding the Zhuang family's coffin to leave you. Originally, I thought that in this life, I wouldn't have any more contact with you. Who knew that not long after I arrived in Hu Province, I discovered that I was pregnant with your flesh and blood. Looking at her daughter, who was sleeping soundly not far away, Schwanger's eyes were full of love. Song Qingshu fell into silence. This matter had always been a thorn between the two of them. Originally, he wanted to hide it from her for a lifetime, but unfortunately, she was intelligent and had already guessed the truth. Although I didn't kill Xiaobao with my own hands, the matter between him and Janning was indeed my plan. Song Qingshu sighed. At that time, I wanted to get rid of Kangxi, but Xiaobao and Kangxi were so close, he would definitely protect him. Moreover, he had always been quick-witted. Once he saw through me, I would be consigned to eternal damnation. I could walk away myself, but the plan to assassinate the dragon all along would go down the drain, so I designed it that way. Of course, my purpose wasn't so pure. It was also mixed with some selfish desires. Why did you admit it? You could have denied it. Schwanger shook her head desperately, tears already streaming down her face. If it was before, she could still numb herself with all kinds of excuses, but now, she no longer had any excuse to escape. Song Qingshu reached out and gently stroked her face. "I don't want to lie to you anymore." Schwanger's face was full of pain. "What do you want me to do now? What do you want me to do now?" "It's very easy." Song Qingshu smiled slightly. "Just kill me." As he spoke, he grabbed her hand and pressed it down. The sharp dark steel dagger instantly pierced into his chest. Blood instantly dyed the front of his shirt red. Schwanger cried out in alarm. She hurriedly grabbed the dagger and wanted to retreat, but her hand was held by the other party. She could only watch helplessly as the dagger slowly pierced into his chest. No, Schwanger's tears flowed continuously. She desperately wanted to pull the dagger out, but unfortunately, her strength was still too weak compared to the other party. In the end, when the dagger was already more than halfway into his chest, Song Qingshu finally let go. It was unknown whether it was because he had no strength left, but there was not a trace of blood on his face. He said weakly, "This way, you can be considered to have avenged Xiaobao." Seeing the dagger deeply pierced into his heart, Schwanger was completely scared. At this time, although the other party no longer held her hand, she did not dare to pull the dagger out at all. She was afraid that the moment she pulled it out, he would die. "Brother Song, why do you do this?" "I don't want you to die," Song Qing-shu smiled sadly. "I don't want to make things difficult for you. I don't want you to live with guilt for the rest of your life. I want to avenge you. I want to avenge you. Tell me quickly how to save you." Schwanger's tears fell down like pearls with a broken necklace. She might not have shed so many tears in her life as today. Song Qing-shu shook his head and closed his eyes weakly. "Brother Song, don't sleep. Don't sleep." Schwanger was anxious. She hurriedly took all kinds of clothes and cloths to block his chest, but the blood kept flowing out. At this time, Yuanzi also rushed over after hearing the news. Seeing this scene, she was scared all over and directly rushed over to push Schwanger away. "How could you be so cruel?" Seeing the dagger in Song Qing-shu's heart, Yuanzi almost passed out. Subconsciously, she wanted to kill Schwang. Schwanger was totally out of her wits and had no intention to resist at all. However, Song Qing-shu caught Yuanzi's hand. He shook his head weakly. "It's none of her business. I did it myself. How could anyone kill himself?" Yuanzi was also anxious and cried. She hurriedly sealed the acupoints on his chest to stop the bleeding temporarily. However, she didn't know how to deal with it since it was a vital part of his body. Schwanger suddenly gritted her teeth. "Brother Song, I'll accompany you." As she said this, she directly slapped her forehead with her palm. Judging from her resolute look, he would definitely die if she slapped him. Yuanzi frowned and hurriedly stopped her. It seemed that Brother Song didn't want her to die. Besides, she didn't know what had happened until now. Naturally, she didn't want him to die like this. Song Qing-shu forced a smile and said to Schwanger, "You have to live well. If you also die, who will take care of our daughter?" "No, I want you to live too. Let's take care of Bauer together." Schwanger felt that her eyes were blurred by tears. She seemed to be drained of her soul and was about to faint at any time. Yuanzi hurriedly said, "Go and find a doctor." Schwanger seemed to wake up from a dream. She hurriedly pulled over her coat and put it on hastily. "Yes, the third young mistress has excellent medical skills. I'll go and find her." As she said this, she rushed out quickly. Soon, third Madame Zhuang also hurried over. Seeing Song Qing-shu's situation, she was also frightened and hurriedly came over to examine him. After a long time, she said with a frown, if a normal person was stabbed in the heart, he would have died long ago. Thanks to Prince Song's excellent martial arts and the fact that his heart seems to be more to the right than that of a normal person, his life is temporarily saved. However, we must pull out the dagger as soon as possible. This is full of risks. It's hard to say whether he will live or die. Chapter 25:02. Third Madame Zhuang responded with a solemn expression. She did not dare to be careless. She pressed one hand on his chest and held the hilt of the saber with the other. Then, she took a deep breath and pulled the saber out almost instantly. At the same time, her fingers quickly pressed on the acupoints near his wound. Although there was some blood flowing out, there was no spurting. Seeing this, she couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Fortunately, his heart meridian wasn't injured. If the knife pierced the heart meridian, pulling the knife out would only hasten his death. Yuanzi, who had been clenching her fists nervously, couldn't help choking with sobs. Brother Song Bauer, who was sleeping like a piglet on a small bed, rubbed her sleepy eyes and got up. "Mother, what's wrong?" Schwanger hugged her daughter tightly as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Bauer, your father is fine." Song Bauer blinked her eyes. It was obvious that she did not understand what was going on at her age. Third Madame Zhuang applied the ointment and bandaged his wound before leaving. Schwanger wanted to come and see him, but was blocked by Yuanzi with a vigilant look. Song Qing-shu said weakly, "No, let her come over." Yuanzi stepped aside unhappily. Schwanger sat on the edge of the bed with a sad and regretful look. "Brother Song, I'm sorry. Song Qing-shu shook his head slightly. "You don't have to apologize. Actually, I had already guessed that such a day would come. You are a person who values friendship and righteousness. If you knew the whole story and remained indifferent, you would not be the Shuanger that I like." Shuanger instantly choked up. Big brother Song Qingshu forced a smile. "But do you still want to take revenge in the future? If it's not enough, I'll stab you now. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't have another chance in the future." Shuanger shook her head with all her might. "No, no, no. Actually, I already regretted my actions earlier. Especially when I saw the knife in your chest. I finally understood what I truly cared about. If you really died, I'm afraid I wouldn't want to live either. Now that you've survived, it means that this is the will of the heavens. Now, I don't care about anything. I just want you to be well." Song Qingshu was finally relieved when he saw how flustered she was and how her words were messed up. The weight that had been weighing on his heart for many years had finally been lifted. Wei Xiaobao's matter in the past had always been a thorn in their hearts. He knew that sooner or later it would explode. Shuang was a sentimental person. Once she found out, she would definitely not remain indifferent. But he really admired and liked Shuanger's temperament, so he could not harden his heart to take any extreme measures against her. What's more, she had given birth to his child, so he could only exchange sincerity for sincerity and completely untie the knot in her heart. Of course, he was not a reckless person. He would never commit suicide. Not only would he be irresponsible to himself, but he would also be irresponsible to so many women. Earlier, Third Madame Zhuang had mentioned that his heart was located more to the right than an ordinary person's, so the stab to his chest had missed its mark. In fact, he had used his internal energy to shift his internal organs to avoid the stab. At the same time, the blade was wrapped in internal energy throughout the entire process, so even if half of the blade was stabbed in, it would only be a superficial wound. The reason why it looked so frightening was that, first, it was stabbed in the position of his heart, and second, he had deliberately used his internal energy to force out a lot of blood. Of course, with Shuang shrewdness, she might not be unable to figure this out in the future, but it was no longer important. The knot in their hearts had been completely untied. On the surface, the stab just now was to give Wei Xiaobao an explanation, but in fact, it was to give Shuang an explanation. After this stab, she would no longer have to bear the guilt and pain, and it could be considered that she had completely fulfilled her responsibility to Wei Xiaobao. In the future, she would be able to live with him with a clear conscience. Yuan Zi, who was standing to the side, could not help but say, "Miss Shuang why did you make a move this time after not making a move for so many years?" As an outsider, she was aware of the abnormality. As if awakened from a dream, Shuang hurriedly replied, "Big brother Song, you have to be careful during this period. It seems that someone is secretly plotting against you." "Oh." Song Qingshu was stunned. Shuang explained, "In fact, although I had some doubts about Xiaobao's matter, I did not have any evidence. At the same time, I deliberately did not think in that direction. However, some time ago, someone sent me a letter and provided a lot of evidence and statements. Then I was sure about Xiaobao's matter. When you suddenly came this time, I subconsciously thought of Xiaobao's matter, so. Song Qingshu patted her hand to comfort her. At the same time, he was lost in thought. No wonder Ying said that she felt there was a big net. Now, he also had the same feeling. Obviously, the other party had investigated for a long time and looked for various possibilities to deal with him. In the past, he hid in the dark and was naturally successful in every endeavor. But now, a tall tree attracted the wind. There must be many people studying his weaknesses. In fact, many things could not stand the investigation. Even the secret of disguise might not be able to be concealed for a long time. But now, he did not care about these. Even if he was exposed, so what? His layout had begun to change from a secret plot to an open one. In the face of absolute power and strength, these plots and tricks were meaningless. But he was a little curious about what weakness the other party would find. "Hey, isn't my weakness lust?" At this time, Shuang continued to say, "There is some contact information in the letter. They asked me to go to Lin and recently. They have a way to help me deal with you. But this is only between us. How can I cooperate with outsiders to deal with you?" Song Qing-shu shook his head. No, you promised them. Pretend to cooperate with them to deal with me. In this way, you can infiltrate the inside and find out what is going on. Schwanger was stunned, but she was also a smart person. She immediately responded, okay. Song Qing-shu then said to Yuan Zi, Z, you stay here to help Schwanger. After all, she is a little weak. If you get any news, inform me as soon as possible. Yuan Zi immediately became anxious. What about you? You're seriously injured now. How can no one take care of you? She thought of Zhou Zhuo's repeated instructions before leaving, but he was seriously injured this time. If something happened later, she would be too ashamed to show her face. Song Qing-shu said with a smile, don't worry. The stab just now didn't hurt my heart meridian. I will be fine after resting for 2 days. With my current cultivation, unless I want to, no one can hurt me. Hearing his words, Schwanger's heart trembled. She knew clearly that if he had not been willing to be stabbed by her, how could she have hurt him just now? Thinking of this, she felt more and more guilty. After a night's rest, the next day, Song Qing-shu insisted on leaving for Lin. Schwanger and Yuan Zi naturally did not want him to take risks. After all, he had been seriously injured. Song Qing-shu knew that his injury looked scary, but in fact, it was not serious. So he asked Third Madame Zhuang to check him. Third Madame Zhuang was very surprised that he had recovered so fast. It was really amazing. In the end, she could only sigh that the cultivation of a great master was unfathomable, and his recovery ability was far better than that of ordinary people. After getting the approval of Third Madame Zhuang, the two women were relieved to let him go. On the way to Lin, and Song Qing-shu heard a lot of rumors in some tea houses on the outskirts of the city before he entered the city. For example, when King Qi was in power, he controlled Zhao Go with a puppet, and he was ambitious. And when he was besieged by 3 Mongolian great masters in Helen City, he had already died there. Of course, all of this was not as explosive as another piece of news, which was the rumor that he had an affair with Huang Rong. Why did someone have such a great malice toward Schwanger? If he remembered correctly, there had been foreshadowing several times a long time ago. Schwanger would avenge Wei Xiaobao. Why was he so surprised? If Schwanger knew the truth and remained indifferent, such a woman would be even more disappointing, wouldn't she? Chapter 25:03. Song Qing-shu was dumbfounded. He never thought that this matter would spread. Those people talked about it, as if they had seen it with their own eyes. Although many of the stories were not true, many of them were close to the truth. He didn't know if the other party was spreading rumors or if they really knew about him and Huang Rong. This is going to be troublesome. Song Qing-shu was curious about how the other party would deal with him. He thought that contacting Shuang to assassinate him was already the most exaggerated plan. He didn't expect that there would be something even more difficult to deal with. Huang Rong had always had a good reputation in Jianghu. Although it was affected by Guo Jing's usurpation, many people still loved and respected her. In addition, the Southern Song dynasty paid a lot of attention to etiquette and morality. If they attacked him from this angle, he really couldn't defend himself. Public opinion couldn't be forcefully changed by force. It made it impossible for him to use his unparalleled martial arts. Moreover, after his reputation was ruined, it would be difficult for him to do anything in the future, just like Wu Sangui. Hearing many of the surrounding tea guests talking about the romantic affair between the two of them, Song Qing-shu's face was as black as charcoal. Sure enough, no matter which world it was, gossip was the most loved by the common people. He didn't know how much pressure Rong was under now. Also, what would Guo Jing's reaction be when he found out? Thinking of this, Song Qing-shu felt a headache. After entering the city, he thought about it and went to the Wang family's mansion. Because of the battle on Mount Wudong, the Wang family was theoretically his ally. They were in the same boat. But he didn't understand why the Wang family just watched the whole process when the Jia family and Shi family made things difficult. After he was announced at the door, he was let in. As soon as he entered the study, several sharp swords stabbed at him. Song Qing-shu coldly snorted and waved his sleeve. The sharp swords in those people's hands were instantly broken. One by one, they fell to the wall as if they were hit in the chest. Wang Ziding, is this how you treat your friends? He stared coldly at the middle-aged man in the study. Wang Ziding's eyebrows jumped. He didn't expect that the carefully selected top masters would be so weak in front of him. His cultivation was now really unfathomable. You still have a nerve to come see me? Wang Ziding also snorted coldly. Song Qingshu was stunned. Not only was the other party not guilty, but he was also very angry. What was going on? What do you mean? What do you mean? Wang Ziding stood up. Li Qingluo is the daughter-in-law of our Wang family. My younger brother was unlucky and died young, causing her to be a widow at a young age. But all of this is not a reason for you to make my younger brother a cuckold. You know. Song Qingshu was shocked. Now that it had come to this, he disdained to quibble. He was just shocked that the mastermind behind the scenes had investigated so thoroughly about him. He was really unscrupulous. If you don't want others to know, then don't do it. Although our Wang family isn't a great family, we can't tolerate such humiliation. Wang Ziding sneered. Song Qingshu finally understood why the change in Lin and why the Wang family's attitude was so ambiguous. It turned out that the problem was here. He replied unhurriedly, "Your thinking is really not in line with the identity of a patriarch of a big family. Compared with the rise and fall of the family, you should be clear about which is more important." Wang Ziding snorted. "I don't need you to teach me this. If it were another person, I would turn a blind eye, but Li Qingluo. The basis of our previous alliance was the engagement between you and Yu Yin. Now in this situation, I know that you have been deceiving me all the time." Song Qingshu finally understood everything that he could not understand before. It was no wonder that the Wang family would sit on the sidelines. They no longer had the basis of an alliance with him. Instead, they had in-laws with the Jia family and the Shi family. The person hiding in the dark was indeed brilliant in taking drastic measures. "You have nothing to say, right?" Wang Ziding said in a low voice. "If you leave now, I can pretend that you have never been here. Otherwise, don't blame me for informing the Jia and Shi families and using the power of the Front Palace Department." Naturally, Song Qingshu didn't want to leave like this. If he did, he would completely lose the most advantageous alliance. He hesitated for a moment and said, "I still say the same thing. For the rise and fall of a big family, those rules of etiquette are nothing." Wang Ziding fell into silence. He knew that what Wang Ziding said was also true. Those rules of etiquette were more likely to deceive ordinary people, but these nobles didn't take them seriously. Years ago, a servant of the Jia family scolded that in their whole family, only the pair of stone lions in front of the door was clean, and there were many dirty things inside. In fact, not only the Jia family, but all other families were like this. Although the thing about Li Qingluo was difficult for ordinary people to accept, it was not a problem at all for big families. She had been a widow in her youth, and it was expected that she would find a man in these years. Wang Ziding wasn't angry because of this, but because of her relationship with Wang Yuyan. It should be known that Wang Yuyan was the foundation of the alliance between the Wang family and Song Qingshu. Now all of this no longer existed. Song Qingshu thought quickly and quickly understood what Wang Ziding was thinking. He answered, "The thing about me and Li Qingluo is at most a rumor. It is impossible for others to have proof. When the time comes, we just have to deny it. Also, the marriage with Wang Yuyan is still the same. Isn't it fine?" Wang Ziding was so angry that he laughed. "How can you say such shameless words so confidently?" Song Qingshu said calmly, "You should know that although the Jia and Shi families used to be glorious, they have already been greatly weakened. Also, this plot to usurp the throne will not end well. Even if they are lucky and succeed, your Wang family will definitely be under them. How can your cooperation with them compare to cooperation with me?" The reason why I arranged the marriage with Wang Yuyan was completely because of the situation at the Wutang Mountain. We were not familiar with each other and needed this to build trust and alliance. But some time ago, our two families worked together and are already familiar with each other. Whether we really need to marry her or not will not affect us at all. Of course, if you're still worried, I still agree to the marriage. If you think that Wang Yuyan's status is unacceptable, you can also find any daughter in the Wang family. I have no problem with that, Song Qingshu said in a low voice. He couldn't help but sigh. Today, he was indeed much more mature than before. He could use marriage as a bargaining chip without hesitation. Sigh, was this the inevitable price of maturity? Wang Ziding's expression changed. Clearly, he was also thinking about what Wang Ziding had said. In fact, he was also not willing to cooperate with the Jia and Shi families, so he had been watching from the sidelines. At the same time, he also knew that after the situation was settled, the Jia and Shi families might not be able to tolerate him. After understanding all these, he gradually calmed down and said, "Okay, but this time the matter is not simple. The whole thing is too strange. I suspect that there is someone behind the Jia and Shi families. So before everything is clear, I can't let the Wang family take the risk. As long as you have the ability to settle this matter, our previous alliance is still valid. During this period, I can even use the power of the Wang family to help you. But all this is on the premise that I need to make sure that you have the upper hand this time." Song Qingshu nodded. He knew that these big families were very cunning and would not release the eagle without seeing the rabbit. But it was enough to make sure that the Wang family would not help the Jia and Shi families. Now that the other party agreed to help him at the right time, it was already beyond his expectation. Wang Ziding hesitated for a moment, then said, "Also, regarding the matter of the marriage alliance, there is no need to choose another daughter of the Wang family. Let's choose Yuyan." In his heart, he was clear that none of the ladies of the Wang clan who were suitable for marriage could compare to Wang Yuyan, and Song Qingshu was famous for having many beauties by his side. If an ordinary daughter of the Wang clan was not favored by Song Qingshu, it would instead be disadvantageous to the Wang clan. Rather than that, he might as well be more generous and send the most outstanding one over. This way, the Wang clan would be able to benefit the most in the future. This time, it was Song Qingshu's turn to be shocked. But her identity is a little troublesome. Wang Ziding's expression was as calm as still water. "You don't have to worry about that. I will take care of it myself. I have found an artist to draw the original art of Goodbye and Dongfeng Muxue. If anyone is interested, you can go to the official account. Monk Lu Ru, check it out. Also, please send me your address, smiley face, 409738219, for the Alliance Master of Stealing Fragrance and a new book Deity of Land. In recent years, they have given out too much money, far more than the cost of reading the book. It would be embarrassing if they did not send some peripherals. I plan to send you a full-size bolster with Goodbye's image printed on it. If the reward for the other 2 books are combined and satisfy the Alliance Master, you can also contact me." Chapter 2504. After coming out of the Wang family, Song Qingshu felt much more relaxed. The Wang family had not been roped in by the hidden forces. His neutrality had helped him to a certain extent. Moreover, Wang Ziding had promised that as long as he was sure that he could settle this matter, he would help. This result was already much better than he had expected. After coming out of the Wang family, Song Qingshu turned around and walked to the nearby Li family. The houses of the officials and nobles in the imperial court were relatively close. He wanted to find Chancellor Li Shouzhong to ask about the situation. After all, the Li family was also one of the few in the imperial court who were on his side, who knew that when he arrived at the Li family, he would be rejected at the door. Li Shouzhong did not want to see him. Isn't this old man too much of a traitor? Song Qingshu felt his teeth itch. He had helped the Li family a lot. How could they turn their backs on him just like that? Naturally, he would not give up just because the door was rejected. He planned to jump into the backyard and directly find Li Shouzhong to ask about the situation. Unexpectedly, when he jumped in the backyard, he saw a beautiful woman dressed as a Taoist nun looking at him with a faint smile. "I was right. Your skill at stealing women is really not bad." Being caught in the act, Song Qingshu's face turned red. "Macho, were you waiting for me here?" The woman in front of him was naturally Li Macho. Hearing him call her that, Li Macho raised her eyebrows. "Don't call me that. I'm here because I don't want you to disturb my father. It's not that I want to say this, but your father is a bit of a traitor. Song Qing said resentfully. Don't speak ill of my father. Li Macho raised her eyebrows. But you flirted everywhere and got yourself a bad reputation. My father is a Confucian scholar and pays attention to such things. How could he have anything to do with you? She paused and added, but he hinted me to come find you. It's good for you. Song Qing laughed. Your father knows that I have a bad reputation, yet he still sent his daughter here. Is he trying to matchmake us? Bah! Li Macho's expression instantly changed. Don't blame me for being ruthless if you keep this up. All right. Who doesn't know that the Scarlet Serpent Fairy can't stand being teased? Song Qing knew that if it weren't for the fact that she couldn't beat him, he would have already used the Hail Silver Needles. In the past few years, there were many underworld figures who had ideas about her, but now the grass on their graves was very tall. By the way, why don't I see your sister? Don't you come out to thank your savior? Last time in the desert, Li Macho brought Li Wenxiu back to Jiangnan, so she should be in the mansion. Don't you dare have any ideas about my younger sister. Li Macho's face was vigilant. I came here to tell you one thing. That is, Miss Rin is currently recuperating in Guling's courtyard. In addition, many people from Wang Fu and the Imperial Palace have followed her there. Oh, Song Qingshu's expression turned serious. Are they safe now? Li Macho nodded. They're quite safe. It seems that the Jia and Shi families, as well as Guijing's side, have reached a tacit understanding with them. Although there are troops stationed around to monitor their movements, no one has touched them. Then she said in a complicated tone mixed with admiration, After all, you are a great grandmaster. Most people don't want to fight to the death with you. There are many people who secretly plot against me. Song Qingshu laughed at himself. This world was like this. When you were weak, a group of strong people came to deal with you. When you were strong, they couldn't fight you head-on, and all began to use crafty plots, leaving you with no place to use your strength. After bidding farewell to Li Macho, Song Qingshu went all the way to Guling. Guling was located near the Gem Mountain to the north of Westlake. The famous Taoist Guhong of the Eastern Jin dynasty used to refine pills here, hence the name. Guling was lush with trees, and the environment was quiet and secluded. Many high-ranking officials and nobles had residences here. Previously, Prince Qi also had one here. Unexpectedly, Lin and had become a refuge. As Song Qingshu hurried along, he did discover many warriors and soldiers stationed nearby. They should be the ones Li Macho mentioned to keep an eye on Ren Yingying and her party. He noticed that many of them were spies from the Imperial City Department. His heart couldn't help but sink. Could it be that the Shui family is also involved? However, he wasn't surprised. When he returned from Mount Wudong, his biggest opponents in the imperial court were the Shi and Shui families. The two families had always been on the same side. It was only natural for them to be involved this time. Thinking of the gentle and considerate Shui Baochai on the way to the Shixiao marriage, Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. It seemed that they were destined to become enemies. Unknowingly, he had already arrived at Prince Qi's residence. Avoiding the spies in the surroundings, Song Qingshu found a place to sneak in. Not long after he walked in the courtyard, a black shadow suddenly attacked him. A palm was aimed at the vital acupoint on his chest. Feeling a faint suction force coming from the other party's palm, Song Qingshu flicked his finger and temporarily sealed the acupoint on the other party's wrist. Then he said, "Father-in-law, it's me." The person opposite him was tall, had a head of white hair, and a pair of domineering eyebrows. If it wasn't Renwushing, who else could it be? Qingshu. Renwushing was overjoyed to see Song Qingshu. He hurriedly pulled him inside. "You're finally back. Yingying will be very happy to see you." Yingying, look who's here," he shouted as he walked. Soon, a beautiful figure came out. They hadn't seen each other for a long time, but Ren Yingying was still as beautiful as ever. Her skin was originally white, but because of the aftereffects of the burning blood technique, she now looked even more delicate and pale. However, not only did this not damage her charm, but it also made her even more charming. Big Brother Song. Ren Yingying was a little puzzled at first, but when she saw her lover's appearance, she instantly covered her mouth in surprise and jumped into his arms. Ren Wuxing's expression softened a little. His daughter had grown terrifyingly mature during this period of time, which made him, as her father, feel extremely distressed. Now that she had regained the appearance of a little girl, he couldn't help but feel comforted. Ying, you've worked hard during this period of time. Song Qing didn't need to ask to know how much pressure she had endured during the incident in Linen. Ren Ying choked with sobs. Big brother Song, I'm sorry. I made a mess of the situation here. Song Qing shook his head. Patting her delicate shoulder, he consoled. What does all of this count for? The entire foundation of the Prince of Qi cannot even compare to a single finger of yours. It's good that you are fine. Ren Wuxing, who was at the side, was somewhat unhappy and hurriedly said, Ying deliberately lured the snake out of its hole. Qi Mansion's properties didn't suffer any losses. Oh, what's going on? Song Qing asked curiously. Ren Ying's face reddened, and she began to explain. It turned out that when she sensed the unusual movements of the Jia and Shi clan, she didn't choose to use her power to suppress them. Instead, she endured and retreated step by step. A large part of the reason why the Jia and Shi clan succeeded in supporting Guo Jing as the emperor was because of her indulgence. Why did you do this? Song Qing was somewhat curious. With Ren Ying's temperament, she definitely wouldn't speak without thinking. Ren Ying looked at him quietly, and after a long time, she said, Big brother Song, I also know of your ambitions. However, the great Song Emperor's kindness to the scholarly officials is extremely popular. Rather than bear the infamy in the future, it's better to borrow the hands of others to do those evil deeds, and then come out to clean up the mess. Dongfang Mushua's original artwork had already been posted on the public account. Chapter 2505. Song Qing was startled. He couldn't help but sigh. She was indeed far-sighted. Before Wang Meng usurped the Han dynasty, he was recognized as a saint by the whole nation. He was on par with the Duke of Zhou. But once he usurped the throne, he immediately became a notorious character. Although his reputation was good, it was far from Wang Meng's. Moreover, there were still many rumors going around. If he really usurped the throne, he would definitely be condemned by the whole world. Now that someone was the first to take the risk of universal condemnation, many of the subsequent matters would be much easier. Seeing that he didn't speak, Ren Ying said timidly, Do you think I'm too bad? Song Qing laughed and pulled her into his arms. Of course not. I think you're the saintess who commands the world. You did very well. You helped me solve a problem that gave me a headache. Ren Wuxing, the big light bulb, also walked out of the room when he saw how intimate they were. He even thoughtfully closed the door for them. He thought to himself that Song Qing was much better than that sickly Ling Huchong. In the past, Ying could only carefully show her bright side in front of Ling Huchong. She was afraid that she would offend Ling Huchong. Although Ying was kind, she was still Ren Wuxing's daughter, the saintess of the Sun Moon sect. She had dug out the eyes, chopped off the hands, and exiled her disobedient subordinates. Although Ying was generally bright, she also had a dark side. Only Song Qing could tolerate and appreciate everything about her. At this moment, his black-bellied and arrogant daughter was blushing in Song Qing's arms. She said with some rebuke, Brother Song, can you not do this in front of Dad in the future? I'm very embarrassed. What does it matter? Isn't it natural for a husband to hug his wife? So what if father-in-law saw it? Song Qing said righteously. Ren Ying knew his temperament, and that it would be difficult for him to change. She could only blush and let him be. All right, what's going on with Guo Jing? Why did he rebel and proclaim himself the emperor? It doesn't seem like his personality. Song Qing couldn't help but ask. I think he's Chai Rong's descendant, but I'm not sure about the specifics. Ren Ying shook her head. It seems that the Xiaoyao sect is also involved. Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao came in person, so the four younger sisters, Mei Lan, Zhu and Zhu, had to listen to her. The imperial palace changed hands so quickly. Due to the uniqueness of the imperial palace, they had arranged for these female disciples of the Vulture Palace to be in charge of guarding and monitoring the inner palace. Who would have thought that the people of the carefree sect would suddenly come out, giving them an opening to exploit? Heavenly Mountain Maiden? Song Qing-shu was shocked. The last time they parted, he had lost contact with her. How could he have known that when he heard the news, they had already become enemies? Other than the Xiaoyao school, there are also people from the Tianming sect. According to my father, Fu Yaohong was the she-devil from beyond the Great Wall decades ago. I don't know if it's a Mongolian plot. Ren Yingying continued. Fu Yaohong should be doing this for her family's mission. Song Qing-shu roughly explained the relationship between the Fu and Chai families. Ren Yingying finally understood. By the way, I've also picked up Aku, Yuan, and her. You don't have to worry about them, Ren Yingying said. These people originally lived in the Imperial Palace. Song Qing-shu couldn't help sighing. You're really my good wife. I thought the changes in Lin and would be very troublesome, but it turns out that everything is under your control. Ren Yingying pursed her lips and smiled. I'm just a fox assuming the majesty of a tiger. In the end, it's because of your reputation that those people don't dare to make things difficult for us. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so easy to pick them up. Song Qing-shu couldn't help lifting her smooth, jade-like chin and kissing her red lips. After a long time, they separated. Sage Nun, do you think you're Vixen? You're so annoying. Ren Yingying raised her pink fist and punched his chest. Noticing the pain between his eyebrows, she was shocked. What's wrong? Are you hurt? Who else in the world can hurt you? Song Qing-shu couldn't help admiring her cleverness. Just a moment of reaction made her guess a thing or two. He said, I'm fine. It's just a minor injury. By the way, on my way here, I heard that the Crown Prince started an uprising in Huzhou and called the whole country to protect the Emperor. But it was suppressed in an instant. Where is he now? He didn't want to tell them that Shuang tried to assassinate him, so as not to cause a grudge between the sisters. He had specially told Yuan Zi before. Ren Yingying confirmed again and again that he was fine and then breathed a sigh of relief. The Crown Prince's uprising is really strange. With his talent, he shouldn't do such a thing like hitting a stone with an egg. But he just took less than 100 servants to do it. It's really incredible. The uprising was suppressed by the state army this time. The Crown Prince was also escorted back to Linen. Now he should be imprisoned in the Imperial Palace. After all, Guijing and these people don't have a deep foundation in the Imperial Court. I'm afraid that they will be secretly released by people loyal to Zhao Song if they are put in the Ministry of Justice or the Supreme Judiciary. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but feel a little confused. Logically speaking, such a former crown prince should be killed on the spot after being caught. Anyway, he could say that he died in the chaotic army, and no one could verify it. That would be the end of it. But it was another thing to catch the crown prince. Should he put him on trial? Everyone knew that he was plotting to usurp the throne. He was a decent crown prince. Why would he be put on trial? It would be more troublesome to let him die secretly in the prison. It would definitely cause public outrage. No one would believe that a good person would die in the prison. All kinds of conspiracy theories would immediately spread all over the world. So no matter how he looked at it, it was not a wise choice to catch the crown prince. Ren Yingying also agreed. She thought for a while and said, Is it possible that Guijing is kind? So he did this. It's possible. Song Qing-shu fell in a deep thought. Whether it is or not, it seems that I need to go to the Imperial Palace. Ren Yingying frowned slightly. But I don't think it is wise for you to go to the Imperial Palace now. The matter between you and Huang Rong has spread all over the world. It is impossible for Guijing to not have any ideas. If he really turns against you, and you're injured now, I'm afraid you will be in danger. When he heard her mention Huang Rong, there was some reproach in her eyes. Song Qing-shu also blushed and hurriedly said, Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. They can't hurt me. There are many doubts that I can't rest assured if I don't personally ask Guijing. Seeing that he was determined, Ren Yingying no longer tried to persuade him. Okay then, I will arrange for someone to meet you outside the Imperial Palace. Song Qing-shu did not refuse. Ren Yingying then led him to the backyard to visit Aku, Zhao Yuanyuan, Zhao Huer, and the other women. When the women saw him, they were obviously overjoyed, and each of them had a lot to say. Song Qing comforted them. Because he still had to go into the imperial palace to investigate, he did not have time to tell them in detail. He promised to chat with them when he returned. Ako was fine, but Zhao Yuan and Zhao Huaner tearfully begged him to help. Although they had no feelings for Zhao Go, they were still the descendants of their ancestors. They still had a certain sense of belonging to their country. Naturally, they did not want to see Zhao Song's country fall into the hands of others. Song Qingshu agreed, but he was thinking in his heart, if one day he replaced Zhao Song, he did not know what the sisters' attitude would be. On the way to the imperial palace, he could not help but feel that it was a lifetime ago. Before, he came here as if he was returning home, but now he was sneaking around like a thief. With the current situation, it was naturally not convenient for him to enter the imperial palace openly. He could only climb over the wall. He was very familiar with the layout of the imperial palace and easily went to the inner courtyard of the imperial palace. Suddenly, there was a commotion not far ahead. A group of guards seemed to be chasing something. In front of them was a man and a woman. When he saw their faces, he could not help but be shocked. It's her. He could not help but sigh. The Alliance Master was indeed a winner in life. Each of them had a wife or a girlfriend. Most of them could not accept a full-sized pillow. Speaking of which, what were you thinking? It's not like you're giving me it all. Also by Highlang, Bingo Big Ice Fruit, I Fly Take You Fly, LZ123321, Uncle House Shoe, and a few other big bosses, please contact me. Even if you don't want a pillow, you can change it to a mouse pad with character artwork or something. Chapter 2506. The man's face was pale, and there were many bloodstains on his body and the corners of his mouth. He looked to be in an extremely sorry state. The woman beside him was graceful and beautiful. Her bright yellow dress was extremely eye-catching, and people could recognize her at a glance. However, her dress was slightly damaged. The yellow-robed woman? Song Qingshu was a little surprised. The yellow-robed woman's martial arts were almost on par with the Grandmaster's. How could she be in such a sorry state? The man beside her also looked somewhat familiar. Song Qingshu stared for a long time before he realized that the man was the Crown Prince. As the Crown Prince in the past, he was high-spirited and well-groomed every day. He looked completely different from his current appearance of a disheveled prisoner. Song Qingshu didn't need to ask to know that the yellow-robed woman had purposely come to the palace to save the Crown Prince. However, she was discovered by the guards and was surrounded. It seemed that she had suffered serious injuries. As for the Crown Prince, his injuries were even more serious. He seemed to be on the verge of death. Let's see where you can run to. A coquettish figure streaked across the sky, leaving behind a few afterimages and directly blocked their way. Another petite figure also appeared behind them, sealing off their path of retreat. You two old demons have disrupted the laws of the Great Song. First, you plotted to kill the Emperor, then the Crown Prince. Even if I die today, the righteous people of the Great Song will not let you off. The yellow-robed woman's almond-shaped eyes were wide open, and her tone was full of grief and indignation. The coquettish figure giggled. I'm not from any prestigious sect, so I'm not afraid of being cursed for killing so many people. However, I have a clear conscience when it comes to dealing with your Zhao family's disciples. As she spoke, her originally smiling face suddenly turned ruthless. In the past, Zhao Kuangyin plotted to usurp the throne and plotted to kill the Gua clan and Fu clan's disciples. How are we going to settle this debt? This coquettish figure was Dan Yuru's master, Fu Yaohong. Song Qingshu didn't expect her to appear here so soon after they parted in Mongolia. Back then, the Fu family was the imperial family of the great Zhou emperor, so they naturally knew that Chai Rong should be called Guorong. The yellow-robed woman was immediately at a loss for words. However, she still said, as a junior, I do not dare to judge what happened in the past. However, these years, the Song Kingdom has been prosperous and the people are at peace. The people are wealthy and have nurtured scholars for 100 years. It can be considered a prosperous dynasty. Let the people of the world judge. See whether they miss your Zhou kingdom or prefer the Song Kingdom. Peace and prosperity? Fu Yaohong sneered. How many years has it been since the humiliation of Jinkong? If I remember correctly, how many of your concubines and madams were taken as slaves by the genes? If even the royal family is in such a state, which of the common people isn't even more miserable? The yellow-robed woman's face immediately turned red. This matter had always been a matter that she hated in her heart, and for a moment, she couldn't find any reason to refute. What's the point of talking so much with her? Let's just get rid of her. The petite figure on the other side snorted. Her mature and overbearing tone was completely different from her tender appearance. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao, Song Qing-shu thought back to the records he had seen in the secret room of Vulture Palace. For a moment, his expression was somewhat complicated. The Heavenly Mountain Tonglao before him was actually no longer the senior sister of that Wu Yizi and Li Qiushui. The real Heavenly Mountain Tonglao was already dead. She was just a little girl that the other party had found by chance and groomed to be the successor. Her memories, knowledge, martial arts, and even a way of thinking were now the same as the real Heavenly Mountain Tonglao. Even though he had lived 2 lives, it was difficult for him to figure out what to do. While he was lost in thought, the few of them had already exchanged blows. Although the yellow-robed woman's martial arts were high, Fu Yaohong and Heavenly Mountain Tonglao were both leaders of the underworld. They were almost at the first rank below the great grandmaster level. How could the yellow-robed woman block them? In almost an instant, she couldn't hold on and was injured repeatedly. Fu Yaohong snorted coldly. A hint of fierceness flashed in her eyes. While the yellow-robed woman was dealing with Heavenly Mountain Tonglao's Heavenly Mountain plum-breaking hands, she stabbed her hands silently towards the back of the yellow-robed woman's heart. The bright red fingernails exuded a demonic glow. They were originally very beautiful fingers, but at this moment, they were more dangerous than any dagger. If one was stabbed by them, even a few holes would be left in a stone, not to mention a body of flesh and blood. The yellow-robed woman naturally knew all this. She used 9 magic claws to fight against the enemy, but her hands were blocked by Heavenly Mountain Tonglao's plum-breaking hands. The opponent's plum-breaking hands were so exquisite that the yellow-robed woman couldn't move her hands at all. She could only watch Fu Yaohong's sharp fingers stabbing toward her back. My life is over. The yellow-robed woman had this thought. She didn't know why she was exceptionally calm at this moment. She had been too tired all these years. It was good to let go of everything like this. She didn't have to bear any more responsibilities or the mission of the academy. Her only regret was that she didn't see that person for the last time. He had a handsome face, but his smile was somewhat evil, which sometimes made people grit their teeth with hatred. "Farewell, Brother Song," she murmured to herself. At this moment, she suddenly heard a teasing voice. "Are you thinking of me?" The pain she had imagined did not come. Instead, she fell into a warm embrace. The yellow-robed woman looked up at the familiar smile of the person in front of her. She couldn't help but feel dizzy. Song Qing-shu held her in his arms. The gauze-like skirt didn't seem to exist. It didn't add any thickness to her slender waist. The yellow-robed woman finally came to her senses. She blushed and hurriedly pushed him away, struggling out of his arms. At this moment, there were 2 soft sounds of surprise. Fu Yaohong and Heavenly Mountain Tonglao stopped their attacks at the same time. Fu Yaohong and Song Qing-shu were friends in Mongolia, so she quickly put away the hostility in her eyes. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao snorted. "Song Qing-shu, every time I see you, you are always lying to girls. I didn't expect you to not change after so long." Looking at her pretending to be old and experienced, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. Ever since he found out her real identity, he always found it interesting to see her. "Why, are you jealous?" The yellow-robed woman blushed. She thought that this guy was really a big pervert. He even dared to flirt with Heavenly Mountain Tonglao. Although she looked like a beautiful girl, she was old enough to be his grandmother. Fu Yaohong also widened her eyes. She had a strange expression on her face. She didn't expect him to be so cold. Did that mean she had a chance? She was from the Tianming sect and was good at seduction. She liked all kinds of handsome men. It was just that Song Qing-shu was too powerful in the past, so she didn't dare to have such thoughts. Now that he was interested in Heavenly Mountain Tonglao, she realized that she was younger than him. However, when she thought about the ambiguous relationship between him and her disciple, she finally gave up the idea. She knew that he wouldn't like her. Heavenly Mountain Tonlao's face suddenly turned red. Song Qing-shu, you even dare to flirt with me. Although she was angry, she couldn't help but think of the scene in the ice warehouse of the Shishao Imperial Palace when she was naked and stuffed into Li Qiushui's bed. For a moment, she was ashamed and annoyed. Looking at the angry face of the legal Lolita in front of him, Song Qing-shu showed a knowing smile. Anyway, you're all famous seniors in the martial arts world. It's a bit unreasonable for you to join hands to deal with a junior. Chapter 25:07. Then, Song Qing-shu glanced at Heavenly Mountain Tonglao and said, especially you. People say that you don't need to make a second move to kill someone, but this time, you joined hands with others to deal with a junior. It's really embarrassing. Putting her hands behind her back, Heavenly Mountain Tonglao said like an elder, it's fine if it's someone else, but I don't have to follow the rules when dealing with the Zhao and Song royals. Otherwise, I would be ashamed to face my master. Only then did Song Qing-shu remember that her master was Pan Lang, the unfettered one. He was the sixth son of Chai Rong, Chai Shijin, who was adopted by Pan Mei. The unfettered one spent his whole life planning to overthrow the Song dynasty and restore the Great Zhou dynasty. After his death, he handed over his will to Heavenly Mountain Tonglao and the other disciples. However, they were trapped by love and wasted too many opportunities. Being raised by Pan Lang, they naturally didn't have any good feelings for the Zhao and Song royals. Success or failure is all in the past. I don't want to interfere with what happened in the past, but I want to take her away now. Is that okay? Song Qing-shu pointed at the yellow-robed woman. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao frowned slightly and didn't speak. Fu Yaohong giggled and said, Prince Song is a kind man, and we have to give him face. Please help yourself. The yellow-robed woman said immediately, and the crown prince. At this moment, Heavenly Mountain Tonglao snorted and said, we can't let you take the crown prince away. What if I insist? Song Qing-shu also wanted to ask about the details of the incident in Huzhou, but he felt that it was too ridiculous. There must be something hidden in it. Little Song, don't go too far. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao snorted and waved her hand, shooting several life-death notes at the crown prince. The life-death notes could make people beg for death, but they could also kill people instantly. Her life-death notes were aimed at the crown prince's Achilles heel, and once they hit the target, he would die instantly. Song Qing-shu's body flashed, and he swept the life-death notes aside with his sleeves. Obviously, Heavenly Mountain Tonglao didn't expect to succeed with these life-death notes. She attacked Song Qing-shu while he was saving the crown prince. Her small pink hands seemed to be waving very slowly, but they left after images in the air. With her wide sleeves, she looked like a fairy. Heavenly Mountain, plump breaking hand. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. The martial arts of the Xiaoyao sect were not only powerful, but also beautiful. Xiaoyao Zi was really a dragon among men. Tianshan Tonglao attacked him several times in a row, but he dodged all of her attacks easily. She knew that he was giving in to her on purpose. She could not help but feel annoyed. Why don't you fight back? In the past, when she was dealing with the island masters of the 36 Isles and the 72 Caves, she could basically take their lives with a single move. Now that she was dealing with a young junior like Song Qing-shu, he had to intentionally go easy on her. This made her feel deeply humiliated. Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly and said, with our relationship, I really don't want to fight. Who has anything to do with you? Tianshan Tongra shouted, and her attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Fu Yaohong might have admired Tianshan Tonglao's martial arts, but she knew that she alone would not be Song Qing-shu's opponent. She laughed coquettishly and joined the fight. Prince Song, this concerns the fortune of the Great Zhou dynasty. I have no choice but to offend you. Once she joined the fight, The pressure on Tian Shan, Tong Lao lessened. Even Song Qing did not dare to be careless. Tian Shan Tong Lao could be said to be half a step away from being a grandmaster, and Fu Yaohong was not much weaker. If they worked together, he had to fight back. At that moment, Fu Yaohong's shock was far greater than his. Even though she knew that Song Qing was strong, she did not expect him to be so strong. If she worked together with Tian Shan Tong Lao, she was even confident that she could fight against Pang Ban. After all, both of them came from the Sacred Order. Pang Ban was the leader of Devil Face sect, and she could be considered as one of the best in Yin Weed faction. There might be a difference between them, but if Tian Shan Tong Lao joined the fight, they would definitely be able to make up for it. But right now, even if they used everything they had, it was difficult for them to injure Song Qing. In fact, she could clearly sense that he was still holding back. When she thought of this, she could not help but feel a little discouraged. It was truly frustrating to compare oneself to others. She had been gathering powerful fighters from all walks of life for decades and practiced the secret manuals of the Sacred Order, but she could not compare to such a young person. The only thing worth rejoicing about was that her disciple, Dan Yuru, had a good relationship with him. Strictly speaking, they were on the same side. Unlike Fu Yaohong's relaxed state of mind, Tian Shan Tong Lao was enraged at that moment. It had to be known that she was the eldest senior sister among the 3 carefree elders, and her martial arts were also higher than Li Qiushui and Wu Yizi's. She had always been prideful, but now she could not win against a young man even when she worked together with someone else. This made her, who always cared about her reputation, feel a little embarrassed. Song Qing groaned in his heart. As the saying went, one could offend anyone but a woman. Right now, Tian Shan Tong Lao was fighting with her life on the line. Sometimes, she would not even let go of her attacks and would attack him with all her might, which made him feel like his hands were tied. Big Brother Song. The Crown Prince is about to die. At that moment, the yellow-robed woman by the side cried out in surprise. She had gone to check on the Crown Prince just now and found that his injuries were so severe that it was difficult to heal him. He was already on the verge of death. Song Qing was shocked. He immediately attacked and forced the 2 women to retreat. He moved in a flash and arrived next to the Crown Prince. When he saw that the Crown Prince's face was as pale as a sheet, he breathed in less than he breathed out. He hurriedly channeled his inner force into the Crown Prince and asked, "What is going on in Hu Province?" When the Crown Prince opened his eyes and saw that it was him, he revealed a surprised and complicated expression. His lips moved, but he did not say anything for a long time. Song Qing frowned and channeled another inner force into the Crown Prince. It was only then that the Crown Prince came back to his senses and said, "I didn't think that I would have to rely on you to save the Song dynasty in the end. You have to be careful of Zhao." Zhao! He stammered out a few words, then stretched out his legs and breathed his last. Crown Prince. The yellow-robed woman looked sad. She did not have any feelings for the Crown Prince, but he was the legitimate heir of the Song dynasty after all. Now that Zhao Go had died in the coup, the Crown Prince was dead, and Princey of Mount Wudong was also dead. There were not many capable people left in the royal family. Song Qing, however, frowned. Why did this fellow make it seem like he was acting in a television drama? He did not say the most important information, but said some unimportant things first. Who exactly did he want me to be careful of? Amiba. At this moment, a peaceful Buddha's name sounded. The voice seemed to be full of compassion, which made people subconsciously feel deep respect. Even without seeing it, they knew that it was an eminent monk. Song Qing looked at the white-browed old monk who was slowly walking over and could not help but feel a chill in his heart. I was wondering how they could change dynasties so easily. Seeing that you are here, everything makes sense. After leaving Mount Wudong, Almsgiver Song is even more elegant than before. It is really admirable, the white-browed monk said with emotion. Song Qing smiled slightly and said, "When you were seriously injured on Mount Wudong, everyone thought that you would not live for long. I did not expect that you not only survived, but also recovered your martial arts to the peak. This is admirable." The old monk in front of him was naturally the sweeping monk. When he was sneakily attacked by Jia Sherdao on Mount Wudong, he was hit in the back by a great grandmaster's punch. But now he looked like he was fine, which was really surprising. The sweeping monk sighed and said, "I am indebted to the protection of the ancestors." The I Ching Jing and the North Underworld Divine Skill are both broad and profound, so I was lucky to be alive. Song Qingshu secretly sighed. The I Ching Jing was the highest martial arts classic of the Buddhism, and the North Underworld Divine Skill was the best secret of the Shaoyao sect. The sweeping monk had mastered both Buddhism and Taoism, so he was really unfathomable. At the same time, he also remembered the question on Mount Wudong. At that time, he felt that the injury of the sweeping monk was not as serious as he thought, but he did not think about it, and thought it was his illusion. Song Qingshu suddenly thought of something and looked in 3 directions. "Since the 3 divine monks are here, why don't you show up together?" Amitabha. 3 Buddhas' names sounded, and 3 old monks appeared in 3 directions. One of them had a yellow face and 1 eye, one had a pale face, and the last one was as black as charcoal. Each of them had a long black rope in their hands. They were none other than the 3 divine monks Du Er, Du Jie, and Du Nan, who had rendered Zhang Wuji helpless at the lion-slaying convention. "King Kong Demon, subduing ring?" Song Qingshu said in a deep voice. "It seems that you want to keep me here." The sweeping monk said in a deep voice, "Donor Song, I have always admired your noble ambition. If it were any other time, I would definitely invite you to have tea and talk. However, this matter involves the hatred of the country and family. Donor Song's status is special, and your martial arts are too high. I'm not sure if I can win. Forgive us for not being moral in Jianghu." Chapter 25:08. The yellow-robed woman, who had been immersed in her sorrow, became angry when she heard this. She scolded, "All of you are old enough to be Brother Song's grandfather, but you want to join forces to deal with a junior. Don't you have any shame?" Song Qingshu touched his nose. He knew that the yellow-robed woman was worried about him, but why did it sound like he was being taken advantage of? Heaven Mountain Tong Lao's face heated up. With her pride, it was already very embarrassing for her to join forces with Fu Yaoong to deal with Song Qingshu. Now, she had to join forces with more people, one of whom was a great grandmaster of the same level. She could not bring herself to do it. Fu Yaoong had a faint smile on her face. She came from a demonic cult, so it was common for her to be bullied by others. She didn't feel any psychological burden. However, she had personally seen Song Qingshu fight against 3 great grandmasters from Lincheng and still survive. She wasn't sure if they were enough to deal with him. Furthermore, they had some friendly relations with Lincheng. Was there a need to completely fall out with him? The calmest person present was Sandu at the lion-slaying gathering. The 3 of them had joined forces to deal with Zhang Wuji with the Vajra demon subduing ring. This had happened once, so it would be much easier to do it again. Amitabha. The monk's eyes were full of guilt. "Benefactor, you are right." He then looked at Song Qingshu. "Benefactor Song, you must know the grudge between the Guo family and the Zhao family. The Zhao family wronged us first. If you're willing to help us, I can guarantee that all of your official positions and treatment in the Song court will be the same. In fact, it will only be better than before. Even the Zhao family's princesses and members of the royal family will be at your disposal. We are old and do not have many years left to live. Only you can truly help Jiang. If you join forces, the state of Zhou will definitely restore the Central Plains and unify the world. You will fulfill Emperor Ruiwu's great wish." Seeing that he was openly trying to rope in Song Qingshu, the yellow-robed woman immediately became anxious. "Big monk, you're shameless. You are a Buddhist, but you're using the Zhao family's women as a condition." Thinking of Song Qingshu's personality, she was really afraid that he would agree immediately. "Miss, you misunderstood." The sweeping monk chanted the name of Buddha in a low voice. "I don't want to kill too much, but I can't not take revenge for what happened in the past. After thinking about it, only when the Zhao family is in Benefactor Song's hands can both of us feel at ease." Hearing the other party's various conditions, Song Qingshu sank into deep thought. The other party had already spoken quite sincerely, and if it was someone else, they might really be tempted. However, Song Qing-shu now held great power in his hands, so there was no need for him to be below others. Seeing that he was silent, the girl in yellow thought that he was really moved. She hurriedly said, "Brother Song, are you really thinking about it? Let's not talk about cooking the hound after the hare is killed. Just talking about the thing between you and Madame Gua. They won't tolerate you. Which emperor will tolerate his empress having an affair with an official?" As soon as these words came out, the expressions of everyone present became extremely interesting. This matter had been widely spread in Linen, but after all, there was no real evidence. Both sides were also deliberately avoiding this topic, but in the end, it was suddenly brought up by her. Noticing that other people were looking at him with strange gazes, even though Song Qing-shu was extremely thick-skinned, he was now flustered. Ying Luo, this girl, was also confused because of her concern. How could she say such words in public? After a long time, it was Fu Yaohong who broke the silence. If Prince Song is worried about this matter, you don't have to worry. As long as Prince Song agrees, we can let Jing and Chief Huang separate. After that, whoever Huang Rong likes and wants to follow, it's all up to her resources. We won't interfere. What does young master think? Song Qing-shu looked surprised. You can make decisions for such a thing? Fu Yaohong nodded. Although the love between husband and wife is rare, it's nothing compared to national hatred and family hatred. In the past 100 years, whether it's our Fu family or the 5th prince, the 6th prince, or the 7th prince, everyone has made great sacrifices in order to restore the country. Jing can certainly understand. Big monk, don't you think so? Seeing that she was looking at him, the sweeping monk also said in a deep voice, "Yes, I can also guarantee this matter. With Jing Er's character, he won't have any objections." After saying this, he sighed in his heart. These years of quiet cultivation in Buddhism could be said to have been destroyed in a day. But as long as he could complete the family's mission, it was worth it even if he went to hell in the future. Thinking of his father's eager eyes looking at him before he died in order to restore the great Zhou dynasty, the sweeping monk's eyes gradually became firm. The yellow-robed woman was stunned. The descendants of the Guo family were really willing to sacrifice their capital. She had seen Huang Rong's beauty and charm with her own eyes. She was worried that Song Qing-shu would really bow down for her beauty, so she hurriedly said, "Brother Song, Hu and Yuan are in love with you. They don't hesitate to risk the world to imitate the story of Empress Yi and Nu Ying as princesses. You can't let them down." Heaven Mountain Tong Lao snorted. To put it nicely, they are princesses. To put it bluntly, they are just slaves of the Jin Kingdom's laundry yard. Besides, it's not so great for 2 sisters to share a husband. My 4 maids, Plum, Orchid, Bamboo, and Chrysanthemum, are 4 sisters of the same mother. Their charm added together is more attractive to men than your 2 younger sisters. Song Qing-shu smiled embarrassedly. I don't dare to accept that. You were the one who gave them to me, but in the end, you turned against me. I don't want to go through that again. Heaven Mountain Tong Lao blushed. Don't blame them. I forced them to listen to my orders. I saved their lives. I raised them and taught them martial arts since they were young. They don't dare to disobey me. They have been very sad during this time. If you still think it's not enough, I can let my last disciple give herself to you as well. You have seen Fu Mini before. No matter her appearance or figure, she is the best in the Vulture Palace. Besides, she used to move around in the martial arts world of Jiangnan as the White Lotus Saintess. Countless men fell in love with her. In addition, she comes from the royal family of the Zhou dynasty. Her status is not lower than that of any princess or princess. How about it? Am I generous enough? Song Qing-shu smiled and did not answer her. Instead, he turned to the yellow-robed woman and said, You heard them. They have offered me such a good deal. Do you have any conditions? Tell me quickly before it's too late. The yellow-robed woman almost fainted from anger. However, this was a matter of national enmity. She did not care about anything else. She took a deep breath and said, If you think Hu Er and Yuan are not enough, you can choose any of the other princesses and princesses of the Song dynasty. Song Qing was instantly amused. He did not expect such a funny scene to happen. It seemed that his reputation was not very good. They thought that he was the kind of person who valued beauty. Do you include yourself among the princesses you mentioned? Song Qingshu looked at her with a playful expression. The yellow-robed woman's pale face instantly turned bright red. Her body trembled for a while before she bit her lip and said, "Of course." "Okay." Song Qingshu smiled. Then he said to Heaven Mountain Tonglao, "Although I am a lustful person, I pay attention to mutual affection. I don't like to use feelings to make a deal. I will have to disappoint your kindness." Heaven Mountain Tonglao snorted coldly. "Isn't it a deal between you and her?" "It's not the same." Song Qingshu walked over and held the yellow-robed woman's hand. "She and I have a foundation of feelings. This can only be considered as a result of our relationship." The yellow-robed woman, who had always been stubborn, originally felt that it was a bit humiliating to agree under that kind of situation. However, for the country and for the clan, she had to agree. When she heard what he said, her slightly trembling body instantly calmed down. Her cold little hands subconsciously held the other party tightly. Why doesn't anyone use this kind of multiple-choice question to test me in reality? Chapter 2509. Are you playing a trick on us? For some reason, Tianshan Tonglao felt a surge of anger from the bottom of her heart. Song Qingshu sighed. "We're all old acquaintances, so I'll tell you something from the bottom of my heart. Although I personally sympathize with the Guo family during the Chenqié mutiny, the winner takes all. Now that the Song dynasty has lasted for 100 years, and although it's weak in external wars, it's still considered peaceful and prosperous. Especially the preferential treatment of scholar officials. I don't know how many unyielding scholars have been raised. If I were to be with you, I would definitely be condemned by thousands of people and go down in history as a stink. So, I'm sorry to refuse your kind offer." "That's right." The monk looked melancholy and said, "We also know that the Song court is very popular. However, we have to do it even if we know it is impossible. Almsgiver Song's unwillingness to work with us is also expected." Song Qingshu bowed to him and said, "Thank you for your understanding, elder." The monk returned the bow and said, "However, we have to get rid of them. Almsgiver Song, please forgive us." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Song Qingshu. His palm was like a gentle breeze, yet also seemed soft and powerless, fluttering in the air. It was unknown where Song Qingshu's body was. Tianshan Tonglao's expression changed greatly. Back then, Master Xiaoyaozi accepted 3 disciples, and the 3 of them were almost equal in talent. However, Li Qiushui was obsessed with love, Wuyazi had a wide range of hobbies, and only she was dedicated to martial arts. So, in the end, her martial arts was the best, and she was quite proud of it. However, she did not expect that the cultivation of her master's missing son had already far surpassed her. Not only was he proficient in the martial arts of the Xiaoyao sect, but he had also integrated various divine skills of Shaolin. Her Tianshan plum-breaking hand was the most profound and wonderful martial arts of the Xiaoyao sect. There is no end to practicing it, and it could integrate all the martial arts in the world into its moves. To some extent, it was very similar to the concept of the 9 strategies beyond the swords. When the Tianshan plum-breaking hand was practiced to the highest level, it could break all the martial arts in the world. But this time, when the sweeping monk made his move, she couldn't see what kind of move he had used. It seemed that in 1 second, it had the shadow of the Xiaoyao sect, and in the next moment, it seemed more like the Shaolin 72 ultimate skills. But when she thought about it carefully, she found that it was neither. She suddenly understood that the opponent had long since jumped out of the rut of his moves, and every time he attacked, it was like an antelope hanging its horn, leaving no traces behind. The funny thing was that she had always been complacent about the Tianshan plum-breaking hand, and thought that it could break all the martial arts in the world. But now that she saw it with her own eyes, she realized that if the sweeping monk's palm was aimed at her, could she dodge it? Initially, Heaven Mountain Tonglao thought that she was only half a step away from being a great grandmaster. However, when the other party attacked, she realized that this half step was like a moat. Apart from being shocked, she was also very curious. How would Song Qingshu be able to dodge this move? Seeing that the sweeping monk's palm was as light as a feather, Song Qingshu didn't dare to be careless. Although this move seemed simple, it was an extremely powerful killer move. Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan were powerful enough, but even with their full concentration on defense, they were still killed by this move. Last time on Mount Wudong, even a great grandmaster was killed by this move. The opponent had used his ultimate move from the beginning, obviously intending to end the battle quickly. Big Brother Song quickly dodged. The girl in yellow was Huang Shang's last disciple. Under his careful training, she had already reached the great grandmaster realm at a young age. She naturally also knew the power of this move. Back on Mount Wudong, her master had been seriously injured by this move. Dodge! A faint smile hung on the corner of Song Qingshu's mouth. Temujin had been killed, and Ah Qing had fallen asleep. What else was there in the world for him to hide from? At this time, the sweeping monk felt a little strange. Just now, he noticed that the other party's breathing was a little sluggish when he spoke. If he wasn't mistaken, the other party was injured. Just now, while giving all kinds of conditions, he was also looking for an opportunity to attack. Just a moment ago, he found that opportunity. This move of his was called One Slap, Two Scatters, and it condensed the essence of his martial arts. To a certain extent, it could be regarded as a kind of rule. As long as he found an opportunity to attack, he would definitely hit, and once he hit, he would instantly kill an enemy, no matter how high the opponent's martial arts were. Even a great grandmaster was no exception. Although Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan's martial arts were high, this was a level that they couldn't understand at all. They thought that their defense was impregnable, but in front of this move, it was full of holes. After decades of painstakingly training in the Sutra Pavilion of the Shaolin Temple, he had thoroughly mastered the martial arts of the Xiao Yao sect and the Shaolin Temple. He was confident that in a one-on-one fight, besides the unfathomable Zhang Sanfeng, no one in the world could be his opponent. However, Song Qingshu was an anomaly. Originally, when it came to martial arts, he thought that he was better than his opponent. But after seeing the golden light in his opponent's eyes, he felt a huge sense of crisis, which made all the hairs on his body stand up. Therefore, he didn't dare to be careless, and gathered the others to attack his opponent together. At this level, he could more or less guess that although Song Qingshu's hidden move was strong, it should be used to deal with a single person and not a group attack. Therefore, if the opponent used that move, Fu Yaohong and the others, who were at the side, could easily take his life. This matter was related to the 100 years of grudges between the Guo and Zhao families, so he couldn't care less. However, there was a faint sense of unease in his heart because the opponent was too calm and didn't have the slightest intention of dodging. Suddenly, Song Qingshu, who was right in front of him, seemed to have disappeared. He was clearly standing there, but his aura seemed to have disappeared into thin air. What replaced? It was an incomparably sharp sword chi. His whole body was like a peerless sword standing there, and when the palm of the monk was about to hit him, the sword chi suddenly bloomed, and a giant sword that went straight to the sky was formed, and then it came straight down. The monk's pupils shrank, and the light palm directly hit the void sword. He hit it 7 times in a row, and his whole body also took 7 steps back. It should be known that his one-hit 2 scatter could kill a peerless master in the world in a second. He rarely used it, but now he had used it 7 times, and his face flashed an abnormal dark red. The sweeping monk stood silently where he was. Just a moment ago, he was in front of Song Qingshu, but now he was dozens of feet away from him. There was a huge sword mark on the stone pavement between the two of them. It should have been caused by that shocking sword chi just now. Everyone in the field stared with wide eyes. In that instant, the sword chi scattered everywhere, and the palm power splashed everywhere. Even with the cultivation of Tianshan Tonglao and Fu Yaohong, they couldn't stand still and subconsciously took a few feet back. Is this the power of a great grandmaster? Everyone was shocked. The shocking sword just now had been deeply imprinted in everyone's mind, and they would probably not be able to forget it for the rest of their lives. At the same time, the monk had hit the ground 7 times in a row, and when he retreated, it was like a mirage. Perhaps even Li Qiushui, who had been immersed in the wave-like micro-steps for decades, would feel inferior. Tianshan Tonglau's heart moved. The scene just now seemed to make her understand something, but in the next second she forgot it. She knew that it was best for her to immediately find a secluded place to study it. Maybe in a few years, she would be able to smoothly step into the great grandmaster realm. Fu Yaohong was very happy. Fortunately, her good disciple had a good relationship with him, otherwise she really wouldn't dare to go against such a guy. The yellow-robed woman's beautiful eyes were full of light. She had been adopted by Huang Chang since she was a child and carefully taught. Looking at the whole world, she was probably the person who had spent the longest time with a great grandmaster. In that instant, she had a feeling that Song Qingshu seemed to be stronger than the last time in the Wu-Tang Dang sect, and he was even more unfathomable than her master felt. While everyone had their own thoughts, the 3 long black ropes had already swept towards Song Qingshu. Chapter 25:10. It turned out that Sindhu saw the 2 of them exchange blows. Although he couldn't tell who had the upper hand, he guessed that they had consumed about the same amount of energy. At this time, the old strength had been used up and the new strength had not yet recovered, so they keenly grasped this momentary gap. Of course, they didn't think that they could defeat a great grandmaster, but they gave the sweeping monk enough time to rest, while Song Qingshu didn't have time to recover. Under this situation, the scales of victory would gradually tilt in their favor. The 3 long ropes were completely black, and no light could be seen when they moved. These 3 long ropes seemed slow, but they were actually fast, without the slightest sound of wind. Obviously, their internal energy had reached the state of perfection. Du Yi's black rope turned into a straight blade, like a spear or a stick stabbing forward. At the same time, the 2 black ropes in Du Jie and Du Nan's hands wrapped around him from behind, tried to entangle him for a moment. Brother Song, be careful. The yellow-robed woman also waved her long whip, using the white python whip technique to coil around 2 of the black ropes, at least to help relieve some of the pressure. Fu Yaohong's figure flashed and blocked her long whip. Tianshan Tonglao hesitated for a moment, but didn't move. Song Qingshu, who was in the center of the Vajra subduing evil circle, waved his left hand and used a skillful force to entangle Du Jie and Du Nan's long whips together, counteracting each other's attacks. Du Jie and Du Nan were shocked. They had been immersed in the Vajra subduing evil circle for decades. The former sect leader of the Kunlun sect died here, and even the former cult leader of the devil cult, Zhang Wuji, was trapped inside and unable to escape. They didn't expect that their opponent could so easily neutralize their attacks. But what made their eyes widen was another thing. They saw Song Qingshu slowly stretch out the fingers of his right hand and gently clamp down on Du Yi's black rope, which was powerful enough to break a stone tablet. Du Yi, on the other hand, was not surprised but happy. With a flick of his wrist, an earth-shattering internal energy hit Song Qingshu's chest. Long whips had a great advantage, which was that they could multiply your internal energy. The closer to the end of the whip, the stronger the power you could wield. As a great grandmaster, the other party's cultivation was higher than his, but if his inner force was magnified by 10 times, would the other party still be stronger than him? He had actually been so arrogant as to directly clamp the tip of his whip with his hand. If it had been any other expert, he was confident that he could even break their ribs and crush their internal organs. The other party was a great grandmaster, so he definitely wouldn't do that. However, breaking the bones of his fingers shouldn't be a problem. At this moment, The sweeping monk hurriedly warned, "Be careful." He stared blankly. He didn't understand why the monk would warn Song Qing-shu to be careful. Could it be that he cherished talent? But now that the two of them were standing on opposite sides, soft-heartedness would not do. At this moment, Song Qing-shu snorted coldly. With a flick of his wrist that was gripping the whip, an even bigger wave followed the black rope and attacked Du. The wave that Du Yi's wrist had conjured was like ice and snow meeting a volcano. It melted in an instant. In his shock, he wanted to let go of the whip, but it was already too late. An incomparably terrifying inner force directly smashed into his chest, causing Du Yi to spit out a mouthful of blood. In that instant, he knew that 7 or 8 of his ribs had been broken, and his internal organs had suffered serious injuries. Senior martial brother, Du Nan, Du Jie, and Du Yi had been meditating in the Shaolin Temple's back mountain for decades. In order to practice the Vajra subduing devil circle, they had practiced to the point where their hearts and minds were interlinked. Even blood brothers could not compare to the feelings between them. Seeing Du Yi in such a miserable state, the two of them were shocked and angry. With a flick of their wrists, they untied the black ropes that were wrapped around them. One of them aimed at Song Qingshu's spine, and the other at his waist. Song Qingshu's face turned cold. In an instant, countless sword chi condensed in the air, and the two impressive black ropes were instantly cut into several pieces. The rest of the sword chi continued to shoot towards the two men's right hands. The Vajra subduing devil circle was called the subduing devil circle, but the three of them had unknowingly entered the devil's path. At the lion-slaying gathering, countless masters from other sects had died under their black ropes. Even the head of the Kunlun sect had been beaten to death by them. Their attacks were extremely ruthless, without the slightest mercy of a Buddhist monk. Just now, whether it was the spine or the waist, a normal person would be lucky enough to survive, but the lower half of their body would be paralyzed. Therefore, Du Jie did not show any mercy. Du Nan's cultivation was originally lower than Du Yi's. In the face of the fierce sword chi, they could not react at all. Before the sword chi reached their bodies, they already felt a faint tingling sensation on their skin. There was only one thought left in their minds: my life is over. At this moment, a gray shadow blocked in front of the two of them. His hands formed an invisible chi that melted the sword chi. However, his body still shook, and his face became paler than before. Song Qing-shu did not attack again. Instead, he looked at the gray shadow with a somewhat complicated expression. Originally, your injury would have recovered in a few days. If you force yourself to attack now, I'm afraid you won't be able to recover in a short time. Ba, the sweeping monk sighed. After all, I brought them out of Shaolin Temple. I can't watch them die in a foreign land. Song Qing-shu said lightly. You should also know the situation just now. I have been merciful. On the contrary, their moves are getting more and more ruthless. Therefore, I plan to cripple one of their hands so that they can meditate and worship Buddha. Thank you, benefactor, for being merciful. The sweeping monk nodded. If you hadn't been merciful, I'm afraid you would have died on the spot. Hearing the conversation between the two, the surrounding people were shocked. Dunan was even more ashamed. It turned out that the other side had been merciful from the beginning. However, what was even more shocking was another thing. Just now, the sweeping monk and Song Qing-shu had exchanged one move. Listening to their words, the sweeping monk had been defeated in one move. How is this possible? The strength of the sweeping monk was well known. He was recognized in Jianghu as a figure on par with Wudong Zhenrenzhang. No matter how powerful Song Qing-shu was, it was in line with everyone's understanding that he was at most on par with him. Even if Song Qing-shu had suddenly risen in recent years and become a great grandmaster, no matter how powerful he was only a little better than the sweeping monk. They were both great grandmasters, so how could the winner be decided so quickly? This was a question that both Song Qing-shu and the sweeping monk knew. If they had fought normally, it would not have been so easy to decide the winner. However, just now, the sweeping monk had sensed that his opponent was injured, so he wanted to end the battle quickly. As soon as they met, Both sides had used their unique skills to fight. However, he had not expected that Song Qingshu's sword qi would be so powerful. In a head-on clash, he had suffered quite a bit. Later on, in order to save Du Nan, his injuries had worsened. At this time, the yellow-robed woman had already given up fighting Fu Yao. Compared to Fu Yaohong's disappointment, she was now looking at the figure with a face full of excitement. Which girl in the world did not want their lover to be an invincible hero? Heaven Mountain Tong Lao had a complicated expression. She thought to herself that this guy had improved very quickly. The last time they had separated, he was clearly not this powerful. How'd he do it? She could not help but want to ask him. At this time, the sweeping monk was injured, and Sandu could no longer fight. Only Fu Yaohong and Heaven Mountain Tong Lao were left. However, both of them had some friendship with Song Qingshu. For a moment, both sides were silent. Take her away. It was still Heaven Mountain Tong Lao who spoke first. She knew that her group could not stop the other party, so she might as well do him a favor. In any case, the crown prince was already dead. A mere yellow-robed woman would not affect the overall situation. However, Song Qingshu shook his head. This time, I came to the palace mainly to see Brother Gua. I have some questions to ask him. Fu Yaohong's brows furrowed. Prince Song, although your martial arts are high, with all of us swarming together and the experts in the palace, you may not be able to win. The restoration of the great Zhou dynasty had been the hard work of several generations. Now that they had finally allowed Emperor Wu's descendant to ascend to the throne, they could not let anyone ruin it, no matter how strong he was. Hearing her words, the guards and soldiers nearby all drew their swords from their waists and drew their longbows. The situation could be triggered at any moment. At this time, Guijing's voice came from deep within the palace. Aunt, let him in. Chapter 25:11. The Gua family was the royal family of the Zhou dynasty, and the Fu family was the imperial family of the Zhou dynasty. According to seniority, Fu Yaohong was Guijing's aunt. Hearing Guijing's voice, Fu Yaohong hesitated. Although Guijing's kung fu was good, Song Qingshu's cultivation level was too high. It would be dangerous for them to meet alone. The sweeping monk said, "Don't worry. With almsgiver Song's character and his friendship with Jing he won't do anything bad to him." Fu Yaohong thought about their relationship with the Mongols and suddenly felt relieved. I was being too narrow-minded. Prince Song, please. Song Qingshu held the yellow-shirted woman's hand. Come with me. He wasn't afraid that Tianshan Tong Lao and the others would attack her if she stayed here, but he was worried that she would leave. They had worked so hard to get closer, and it would be a pity if they parted so soon. Feeling the warmth of his hand, the yellow-shirted woman's heart warmed. However, her eyes fell on the crown prince's body, and she looked hesitant. Fu Yaohong said, "Don't worry. The crown prince is dead. No matter how big the grudge between us is, we won't destroy his body. I'll send someone to bury him later." The yellow-shirted woman was relieved. She wanted to express her gratitude, but when she remembered that the crown prince was killed by them, she couldn't bring herself to say thank you. Song Qingshu patted her hand to comfort her, and then led her deeper into the palace. Because of Guo Jing's orders, the journey was smooth. Outside the imperial study, Song Qingshu said to the yellow-shirted woman, "Wait here for me. I have something to say to Guijing." After all, they had a national grudge, and it wouldn't be good if there was a conflict inside. The yellow-shirted woman nodded, and she was as obedient as a young wife. Song Qingshu looked at her in surprise. He couldn't help but ask, "You didn't run away, did you?" The yellow-shirted woman rolled her eyes at him. "Don't worry, I'll wait for you." He couldn't help but think of the scene where he defeated the sweeping monk and the others. He was really handsome. After receiving confirmation, Song Qingshu walked into the imperial study. A burly figure was standing by the window, staring blankly at the moon in the sky. When he heard Song Qingshu enter, he turned around and looked at Song Qingshu with a complicated expression. "Brother Song, I didn't expect to see you again in such a situation after we parted ways in Mongolia." Song Qingshu looked at Guijing, who was dressed in a dragon robe. For a moment, he was not used to this style. He could not help but sigh. "Yes, No matter how wild my imagination was, I never expected you to become the emperor. Guojing smiled bitterly. I didn't expect it either. After coming back from Mongolia, I learned too many things that I didn't know before. I don't know how to deal with it. Song Qingshu suddenly felt a little embarrassed. He thought of the rumors about the affair between him and Huang Rong. Obviously, he also knew about it. He wanted to explain, but he didn't know how to start. I didn't expect that I was actually a descendant of the Zhou dynasty's royal family. In the past few decades, countless people from the Guo clan and the Fu clan have worked hard to restore the Zhou dynasty and take revenge on the Zhaosong dynasty. Countless people have spent their entire lives, some even sacrificing their lives. Guojing looked at his hands. But I've always been protecting this country that my enemy built. Because of this, my mother lost her life. Song Qingshu said in a low voice, Brother Guo, everything you did was for the country and the people, not for the Zhao family's imperial court, so you don't have to blame yourself. Thank you for enlightening me, Brother Song. Guojing forced a smile. Actually, I told myself the same thing, but I also know that if I had known about my past, I probably wouldn't have made such a choice. Back then, I thought I was from the Song dynasty. I didn't expect that I was actually from the Zhou dynasty. Song Qingshu was silent. This was the helplessness of fate. Many times, it didn't depend on human strength. He hesitated and asked, Actually, even if you knew about your past with your personality, you aren't the type to be greedy for power. Why did you rebel with them and become the emperor? Rebel? In your eyes, this is rebellion? Guojing laughed self-deprecatingly. I'm just taking back what the Zhao family shamelessly took from us. Song Qingshu couldn't help but say, It seems that Fu Yaohong and the others have had a great influence on you these days. Guojing shook his head. They did instill a lot of hatred for the Zhaosong dynasty in me, but I won't change so easily. After all, I'm no longer that naive and foolish boy from back then. Then why? Song Qingshu was slightly puzzled. From his tone, he didn't detect the hatred for the Zhaosong dynasty that Fu Yaohong, Fu Mini, and the others had. Why would he join a rebellion? As I said earlier, I learned many things in these days. Guojing looked deeply at him and continued. Other than the fact that I am a member of the Zhou dynasty's royal family, the other thing is that I failed to become the palace marshal. Song Qingshu recalled that when he was in Lin, because of Guojing's meritorious service in defending Xiangyang and his high prestige, there was a great clamor for him to be appointed as the commander of the Front Palace Department, responsible for protecting the imperial family and cooperating with Han Xingzhou on the northern expedition. But later, the matter ended without any progress. Everyone was guessing the reason. So the Zhaosong emperor already knew the truth of my past. So how would they dare to give me such an important appointment? Guojing laughed self-deprecatingly. Back then, Rong had disappeared for no reason. It was a trap they set to prevent me from participating in the front contest. Song Qingshu suddenly understood. Back then, he knew that Huang Rong had been captured. At the time, he had been curious about the reason. Now he finally understood everything. But, Brother Guo, you don't look like someone who is greedy for power. You don't have to choose to rebel because of this? Guojing sighed. I really don't care for the position of palace marshal. But this time, someone showed me many secret documents. Only then did I know that Zhao Go had secretly planned to get rid of me. Back in the northern expedition, I was purposely set up by them to go deep into enemy territory alone. They wanted to use the gene to kill me. Thanks to your help, I was lucky enough to keep my life. Song Qingshu sighed. Back then, Guojing had risked his life for the Song dynasty. During the northern expedition, he was tacitly abandoned by the other armies. In the end, he was surrounded by the Jin army. He had personally experienced this. I could not know. Other than that, Zhao Go also designed a few other backup plans. He wanted to get rid of me secretly. He even planned to kill Rong Fu and the others. Guojing smiled sadly. Back then, the Zhao family took advantage of the Rui emperor's death to bully the orphans and widows of the Zhou dynasty. I didn't expect that 100 years later, they would kill us all. A man is born in this world. If he can't protect his wife and daughter and can't comfort his ancestors, then what's the point of living? Song Qingshu fell silent. The other party was right. In the end, it was the Zhao family who had wronged the Guo family. But between countries, there was no right or wrong. Of course, he also knew that if he was in Song Qingshu's shoes, he would most likely make the same choice. But Guo Jing was a person of noble character. Even if Zhao Song had wronged him, he would not have such a strong reaction. Come to think of it, whether it was Fu Yaohong or the sweeping monk, they all had a great impact on him. In addition, the various things during the Northern Expedition and the experience in Mongolia, where he had no choice but to separate from Huazheng, must have affected his worldview to a certain extent. All these factors together led to the current situation. Now that they were so close to each other, he could still feel Guo Jing's innocent heart. However, it would be unrealistic to say that Guo Jing had not changed at all. The Guo Jing now was no longer the hero of Xiangyang that he used to be. Song Qingshu could not help but ask. This time, Fu Yaohong and the others helped you. Obviously, they also borrowed the power of the Mongolians. In the future, will you return the favor to the Mongolians? Guo Jing shook his head. Although I no longer consider myself a Song person, I'm still a Han. I have seen the Mongolians burn, kill, and loot with my own eyes. How can I betray the interests of my country for my own selfish desires? Back then, Emperor Ruiwu was the pride of his generation. Unfortunately, the heavens did not give him a break. Otherwise, he would have already unified the world. Later, Zhao and Song would not have been weak, and the people of the Central Plains would not have been bullied by the foreign tribes. As a descendant of Emperor Ruiwu, I have the responsibility to carry on his unfinished legacy. Hearing this, Song Qingshu was secretly impressed. Brother Guo, you are so bold. Guo Jing sighed. But now, I may not be able to hold on to the throne, let alone conquer the Central Plains. Song Qingshu did not say anything against his heart. Indeed, he may not be able to hold on to the throne. Not to mention himself, many other powers may not be able to accept him. It was just that everyone was still watching and had not made a move. After all, the Zhou dynasty had been destroyed for more than 100 years. How could it still rally people? Guo Jing suddenly changed the topic. The last time I left Mongolia, I was in a hurry. How is Huazheng? Song Qingshu nodded. Princess Huazheng is fine, but she is under house arrest in the palace. She cannot see you, so she can only wash her face with tears. Guo Jing's face revealed a pained expression. I have let her down. I ruined the first half of her life, and I did not expect that I would ruin the second half of her life. Song Qingshu comforted him. This is not your fault. When you lost your memory in Mongolia, you may feel sorry for her. But in her eyes, the time she spent with you was probably the happiest time of her life. Hearing this, Guo Jing could not help but be moved. Obviously, he was reminded of the time when he lost his memory with Huazheng. It was indeed a rare, carefree time. It could be said that he had never been so happy. After a long time, Guo Jing suddenly said, Brother Song, I would like to ask you for a favor. Brother Guo, please say it. As long as it is within my power, I will do it without hesitation. Song Qingshu said seriously. Guo Jing looked at him with a complicated expression. After a while, he said, If anything happens to me, I will trouble you to take care of Rong. This. Song Qingshu suddenly felt very embarrassed. He had never thought that Guo Jing would say this. He did not know whether Guo Jing was testing him on purpose or was sincere. For a moment, he did not know how to respond. Guo Jing did not say anything more. Instead, he changed the topic. Well, I'm a little tired. Brother Song, please go back. Until they came out of the palace, Song Qingshu still did not come back to his senses. He did not know what Guo Jing meant. What did you say to Guo Jing? The yellow-robed woman was a little curious and could not help but ask. Chapter 25:12. We talked about the past, but not much else. Song Qingshu briefly recounted the conversation in the imperial study. Of course, he left out the matter of Huangrong. The yellow-shirt woman couldn't help but sigh. I admire Hirogua's character. Unfortunately, fate makes fools of people. Yes. Song Qing-shu also sighed. At this moment, Guijing was just like Xiao Feng in the original novel. He had fallen into a dilemma arranged by fate. No matter what he chose, he would only receive pain. Therefore, in the original novel, Xiao Feng could only commit suicide. The fates of the other male protagonists were much better. Ling Hucheng didn't have to worry about killing his master for revenge because Yi Lin helped him. Duan Yu didn't have to worry about ethics and love because his mother cheated, so he didn't have to face a dilemma. Thinking of this, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but feel lucky that he didn't have to face such a choice. But with his uninhibited personality, even if he was in Guo Jing's position, he probably wouldn't be so conflicted. Right? Guo Jing has already promised to bury the crown prince's body in the royal garden. You don't have to worry too much. Song Qing-shu comforted her. The yellow-shirted woman grunted. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I wouldn't have made it out alive, not to mention the crown prince. Song Qing-shu smiled. Didn't I promise your master to take care of you? It seems that I didn't break my promise. The yellow-shirted woman pursed her lips and smiled. Back then, my master couldn't stand your playboy personality and was worried that I would be harmed by you. So he specifically asked you to teach me martial arts. That's fine. Call me master, and I will teach you everything I know. Song Qing-shu pretended to stroke his long beard, pretending to be a teacher. Tui. The yellow-shirted woman spat, but refused to say it out loud. Song Qing-shu moved his face closer to her. Then, what you said in the palace just now, does it still count? What did I say? I don't remember. The yellow-shirted woman's heart skipped a beat, and she turned her head away, blushing. Song Qing-shu sighed. If that's the case, I'll go back to the Guo family. They still have a bunch of princesses and princesses waiting for me to marry. The yellow-robed woman immediately became anxious. Although she knew that he was joking, she still subconsciously pulled him back. Do you really want me to repeat myself? Song Qing-shu smiled and said, If you're too shy to say it, then let me kiss you. The girl in yellow unhappily rolled her eyes at him, thinking that kissing him would be even more excessive. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but sigh. She was so beautiful that even the whites of her eyes were so beautiful. Looking at her fair and somewhat transparent skin, he couldn't help but feel his index finger move. He leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. Hey you. The yellow-robed girl was startled and subconsciously wanted to dodge, but the other party held her waist, making her unable to move. And because she turned her head to speak, the other party took the opportunity to kiss her red lips. The yellow-robed girl's body trembled, and her breathing quickened. She subconsciously wanted to push him away, but the other party was like a mountain, so she couldn't push him away. After pushing a few times, there was no effect, so she could only let him. Seeing the yellow-robed girl slowly close her eyes and let him do whatever he wanted, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but be amused. It seemed that sometimes it was better for a man to take the initiative. These women were obviously willing, but for various reasons, they couldn't bring themselves to do it. No wonder those overbearing CEOs were so popular in his previous life. They were all upright in body and mouth. When they returned to Galing Courtyard, the yellow-robed girl suddenly became a little nervous. Brother Song, is Miss Rin really not fierce? Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. It's not like you haven't seen her before. Why are you suddenly so nervous? The yellow-robed girl bit her red lips. It's not the same. In the past, there was nothing between us, but now, Song Qing-shu laughed and said, I understand. It's the new daughter-in-law paying respects to the matriarch. If you're so nervous every time, then you'll be flustered in the future. In the future, when you see Zhou Zhuo, when you see Ijio, when you see your two younger sisters, when you see... The yellow-robed girl was so angry that her face turned red, and she fiercely pinched his waist. It's all because of you, you womanizer, that I made such a fool of myself. Song Qing-shu tightly held her soft little hand. Don't worry, Ying is very easy to talk to. Even Hu and Yuan can get along with her peacefully. What are you worried about? Even so, the yellow-robed girl was still very nervous when she entered the courtyard. When Rin Ying learned that Song Qingshu had returned, she hurriedly came out to greet him, and when she saw the yellow-robed girl, she was surprised. "Sister Yang is also here. Please sit." The yellow-robed girl immediately panicked and hurriedly said, "Young Miss Rin, don't call me sister. I don't deserve it." Rin Ying was startled, feeling that the yellow-robed girl was a little strange today, and looked inquiringly at Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu embarrassedly smiled. "Ying, she should call you sister in the future." Rin Ying was extremely intelligent and immediately understood. She pulled the yellow-robed girl's hand and sat down, and a trace of smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Actually, us sisters have been guessing when you'd be tricked by this guy, but sister's face is too thin, so we were worried for you at that time. Fortunately, now it has finally come to fruition." Hearing a few words from her, the yellow-robed girl's panicked heart gradually calmed down, and she said with some embarrassment, "Sister Rin, you can just call me Ying Luo." Rin Ying smiled. "Then you can also call me Ying. There's no need to call me sister. Our family doesn't have this rule." The yellow-robed girl made a sound of agreement and quietly glanced at Song Qingshu, and the big stone in her heart was completely lifted. Song Qingshu saw that the two of them were chatting happily, but he was somewhat worried. They wouldn't have to go through the experience of 3 months without water to drink again, right? But aside from the two of them, there was also Yuan, and the others in the residence, so there shouldn't be such a problem. The two of them chatted for a while, and then Rin Ying began to ask about the matter of entering the palace, and Song Qingshu roughly explained the entire process. Rin Ying nodded her head. Guo Jing's words revealed a piece of information. He mentioned that someone had shown him some secret files, and it seems like there really is someone behind this, which is in line with our previous speculation. Song Qingshu was surprised and couldn't help but sigh. "Ying, you are really meticulous. If you didn't mention it, I wouldn't have noticed." The yellow-robed girl hurriedly asked, "Who is the person behind this? Could it be the Imperial City Department that has access to these secret files?" The Imperial City Department is controlled by the Shui family. "Could it be the Shui family?" Rin Ying replied, "Right now, it doesn't matter who it is. The key is to lure him out. He's been hiding in the dark, and it is really difficult to guard against him. As long as he comes out of the water, it will be easy to deal with him." How to lure the snake out of the hole? With someone helping to think, Song Qingshu was too lazy to use his brain. Today's matter of you entering the palace certainly can't be hidden from people with intentions, and the Crown Prince's death will certainly be exaggerated. Sandu is seriously injured, and the key is that the sweeping monk is also injured, so the deterrence is not as strong as before. If the person in the dark wants to take action, this will be the best opportunity. Ren Ying analyzed, but I am worried that the person will be afraid of your existence and won't dare to make a move, so we have to create a false impression that you are also injured in this battle, and we are taking you back to Yangzhou to heal. Song Qingshu shook his head. There are many spies in the palace, and our battle at that time may not be hidden from people with intentions. I'm afraid it won't be easy to make that person believe that I was injured. Then what should we do? Ren Ying frowned slightly, obviously also having a headache. At this moment, a subordinate suddenly came with a secret letter. Song Qingshu took it and read it, and a smile immediately appeared on his face. That person can't hold back anymore. At this time, Yuan Zi sent a message from Huzhou. It turned out that someone had found Shuang, and Shuang, had agreed according to the agreement, and was now on the way to Linen. What does it mean? Rin Ying and a yellow-robed woman came over to read the secret letter, but they couldn't understand anything. Only then did Song Qingshu roughly tell them about Shuang's matter. Rin Ying was so scared that her beautiful face turned pale, and her fingers trembled as she stroked his chest. "So, this is how you got injured. I was wondering how someone could hurt you, and why didn't you tell me before?" "The main reason is that I was afraid that you would have a bad opinion of Shuang, and she actually changed her mind at the last moment. It was me who pulled her hand and stabbed her," Song Qingshu explained. Ren Ying snorted angrily. "Shuang is really affectionate and loyal to avenge Xiao Bao. who died a long time ago. She is a rare, extraordinary woman in the world. How can we have a bad opinion of her? After all, it's you who flirt everywhere and finally get into trouble. The yellow-robed woman also couldn't help saying, "It's indeed a little bad for you to rob others. You want to say that I'm despicable, right?" Song Qing-shu said with a wry smile. "I did do a lot of wrong things in those years." Ren Ying, however, was reminded of something and couldn't help scolding him. "The means you used on me at that time were not glorious. It was only because I was blinded by lard that I fell in love with you. But if you always walk by the river, your shoes will always get wet." Shuang, Er's case is also a warning. In the future, you'd better not seduce other people's wives and daughters, in case someone comes to avenge your husband one day. We have so many sisters. Are you still not satisfied? Even if you're not satisfied with your current status, what kind of woman can't you find? Why do you need to do such disgraceful things? I didn't force myself on them. Our relationship was consensual. It's not as unbearable as you think. Song Qing-shu's old face was burning. Besides that, I've already washed my hands of prostitution. For some reason, his tone was a little guilty. Ren Ying said with a faint smile, "Washed your hands of prostitution? What about Huang Rong?" Song Qing-shu was at a loss for words. He didn't know how to explain. The yellow-robed woman couldn't help but sigh. "I didn't expect that even someone like Huang Rong couldn't escape your clutches. Speaking of which, I admire you a little." Ren Ying nodded in agreement. "When I heard the news, I was shocked, but I also admired you." Song Qing-shu finally couldn't hold back his anger. All right. If you say anything else, don't blame me for using the family rules." Family rules? The yellow-robed woman looked at Ren Ying blankly. Ren Ying blushed and couldn't help but spit. This bastard uses this trick every time. Thinking of how she would look when he used the genuine chi of joy, her heart beat wildly. How could she have the time to talk to him? 2 days later, a shocking news suddenly spread in the streets of Linen. Have you heard that Song Qing-shu, king of Qi, was assassinated? No one knows whether he's alive or dead. Nonsense. King of Qi's martial arts are unparalleled. How could anyone assassinate him? Of course not for men, but what about women? Which man can guard against an assassination when he's in the most ecstatic state? Well, it's really possible. King of Qi is the most romantic person with countless women around him. Sure enough, he will die on a woman's belly in the end. In the beginning, it was just a rumor. However, as time went on, more and more details became detailed. No one from the Prince of Qi's residence came out to clarify the matter. There were even people who saw the Princess of Qi weeping and secretly wearing mourning clothes. King of Qi was really dead. When this news came out, it was like thunder on the ground. The entire Southern Song officialdom was extremely shocked. But after a few days, an even more shocking news came. Princess Beijing rose up and called on the people to help the king. In just a few days, she broke into the palace and successfully overthrew the fake dynasty established by the Guo family and restored the orthodoxy of Zhao and Song. Who said I'm short? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.